job. After almost 4 years together, Erin, my fiancé, and I have been engaged for around 1 year. We are at last organizing our wedding, something I have been dreaming about. I have given every tiny detail great care. For the past 4 months I have been tirelessly trying to make sure everything is flawless. We expected all of our loved ones to be there, so we selected the date, issued invites. That was the intended course of action regardless. Brandon and Daisy, my parents, make for an intriguing team. My 58-year-old dad works for a building company. He has always been the quiet, follow-through kind. Daisy, my mother, 55, has stayed at home for as long as I can recall. They have always harbored a particular fondness for my 32-year-old older brother, Fred. Actually, soft spot could be understated. Certainly their favorite, he is the golden child if you will. Fred is somewhat a bit of a character. Though I'll say he's usually ambitious, none of his commercial endeavors ever really turn out. He seems to live in a fantasy world where his next great invention would at last make him wealthy, having had several failed businesses. Married to Alice, 30, he has 2 children, 3-year Jenna and 5-year Ethan. Although I personally have nothing against them, it is no secret they live much over their means. My parents are always rescuing them. It has come to the point where it is expected. While I have always had to fend for myself, Fred and his family effectively live off the support of my parents. Though I knew there would be some drama, especially with Fred's concerns, I couldn't wait to inform my family when Erin proposed. Still, I tried to be upbeat. I recall the day we announced our participation. Just close family and friends, we had a little gathering at our residence. Sharing the news made me very eager, and for a split second it felt as though perhaps my parents would be delighted for me rather than only focused on Fred. Naturally though, Fred and Alice took the front stage. Just midway through our announcement, Fred began discussing his plans to open a new company and his desire to move to a larger house. The entire dialogue turned from our involvement to Fred's most recent ideas. Though it was aggravating, to put it mildly, I did not want to create a scene. I simply let my pride slide after swallowing it. Erin observed though, and later that evening he told me he was glad of my handling of it. That was quite meaningful to me. Choosing the day was still another challenge. 4 months ahead we chose a date so that everyone had plenty of time to arrange. Before deciding on it, I even followed up with my parents to see whether they were conflict-free. No trouble, they promised me they would be there. Although I should have known better, I thought that marked the end of it. I went all out in the particulars. We selected flowers, a lovely location, and the ideal outfit. Everything was lining up and I was growing increasingly enthusiastic. This was meant to be our day, a celebration of our love amid the people most important to us. Hoping it would assist to ease any possible problems, I also included Fred and Alice in the wedding party. Deeply though, I felt a storm was building. That storm struck when my parents abruptly contacted me from out of the blue with a pressing demand. It sounded bad since they had to discuss the wedding. My parents abruptly decided a few weeks ago to travel with Fred and his family. At first I puzzled myself since I assumed they were discussing a trip following the wedding. But actually, they meant the week my wedding was scheduled. Since the wedding date ran counter to their vacation schedule, they wanted to know whether I might potentially change it. I gasped. I booked everything, the venue, the caterers, and had months of planning for this wedding. I sent invites. And now, as if it were some laid-back dinner gathering, they were asking me to reschedule the date. Suddenly less significant than a last-minute trip with Fred and his family was my wedding day, the day meant to be about Erin and me. Though I attempted to keep cool, I was enraged. Why would they want to schedule a trip right next to the wedding date we have already decided upon? The answer from my mother was, well, you know how occupied Fred's calendar is, and this was the only time they could all go together. It shocked me. Fred's trip came first for them than my wedding. I informed them there was no choice about the date. Everything was previously set, I could not have moved it merely to fit Fred's trip. Suggesting that perhaps I should at least speak with the venue and see if they could change the date, my dad tried to be a peacemaker. But I closed that right away. The date was decided upon and that was definitive. My mother became irate and declared I was being irrational when I insisted on a different date. She continued on how family should come first, and how my rigidity was making things tough for everyone. She even charged me with trying to sour their friendship with Fred and his family. Though I stood my ground, that truly stung. I informed them I was not going to reschedule the date. If they missed it, that was on them. For a minute they were quiet. Then my mother remarked they would have to think about it. They hung up, not even bidding farewell. It still amazed me that my own parents, on vacation, were genuinely thinking about skipping my wedding. Furious on my behalf, Aaron advised me to try to straighten things out by calling them back. I therefore followed. Hoping for some middle ground, I phoned them, but things did not proceed as expected. I tried to convey the significance of this wedding to me, the length of time I had been arranging it, and how painful it was that they were even recommending I change the date. Still, they were tenacious. My dad kept stating that Fred's family had already booked everything, fully ignoring the fact that I had booked everything in advance too. My mom kept suggesting that I was being irrational. Changing my schedule would be equally as difficult for me. It felt like chatting to a stone wall. I realized at the time I had to include the extended relatives. I told my aunt, who I live somewhat near, the circumstances. She promised to talk to my parents. She was exactly as startled as I was. Maybe hearing it from someone else will help them to recognize how foolish they were acting. My parents doubled down instead of backing off though. Beginning to present me as the irrational one, they began phoning other family members. They claimed I was not compromising and causing problems for everyone. They even made hints suggesting I was envious of Fred and sought to punish him by postponing the wedding date. Though some of the family began to support me, stating I should be more accommodating of Fred's family, it was total stupidity. They were obviously attempting to get me to cave in. I was not going to let them prevail. They were trying to compel me to modify the date by means of shame and family pressure. I was about to let them wreck it just to please Fred. I had every right to have my wedding on the day I had selected. I thus informed them that the date was set. Should they be unable to make it, that would be their choice. But that was final. I was not going to alter it. So Reddit, am I the jerk for not adjusting the wedding date in response to the vacation of their golden child? I am very appreciative of everyone who took the time to reply. After publishing my experience here, I got an incredible amount of support and guidance. Reviewing the comments, many individuals speculated that there could be more to my parents' abrupt trip plans than they were disclosing. It started me to consider, thus I chose to dig some. I began by chatting once more with my aunt, who has always seemed to me as essentially a second mother. She was not surprised by what was happening as she knew how my parents are with Fred. She became quite quiet though, when I mentioned the vacation. A moment later she said she had heard Fred was once more experiencing some major financial difficulties. His most recent commercial endeavor apparently failed, and he owed money. Though not enough, my folks had started supporting him once more. Desperate, Fred was seeking for a means to keep his head above water. As it happens, the trip was really a cover tale. Though not for a laid-back vacation, my parents were intending to send Fred and his family to Europe. They were scheduled to meet some possible backers Fred had located abroad. Before Fred lost everything, the entire trip was a last-ditch attempt to find someone to commit to his company. Their financial position was depending on this trip to save Fred, hence they were quite determined to travel. When I learned, I became enraged. It was about my parents once more putting Fred above everything else, including my wedding, not only about the vacation. They were ready to skip my big day in order to try to save Fred from another problem he had created. Knowing the facts, I understood I had to face Fred. I inquired whether we might meet when I phoned him. I didn't want to allow him time to get ready for any excuse, thus I didn't inform him what it was about. I came right to the point when we got together. I assured him I understood his financial problems, the trip, the investors. He initially tried to play it off, claiming it was merely a business opportunity that happened to line up the wedding date, but I was not buying it. Defensively, he stated I didn't know how much pressure he was under, how he was trying everything he could to support his family. I reminded him that our parents had been rescuing him for years. This was not the first time he had fallen into a financial hole. Fred said at last that things were terrible. His company was close to bankruptcy, hence he would lose everything should this investor transaction fall short. But he sought to guilt-trip me rather than own responsibility. As his sister, he advised me to want to assist him in whatever capacity, even if that meant changing the date of my wedding. He charged me with being egotistical and unconcerned about his family. That was the final straw. I informed him that although I had supported him as much as I could over the years, I would not be sacrificing my wedding day for his bad choices. I made it plain that I was not going to modify the date. If he couldn't be there, that was his option. I went away leaving him seated there. Following the confrontation with Fred, I chose to get in touch with Alice. I wanted to hear her side of the tale since I wasn't sure how much she knew about things. She seemed tense as soon as we sat down when we met for coffee. She most likely understood I was not there to discuss wedding preparations. I asked her straightforwardly about her knowledge of Fred's predicament and the European trip. She said she knew the financial problems but lacked all the specifics. Though Fred had withheld a lot of it from her to guard her, she knew things were horrible. She appeared startled when I told her the true motivation for the vacation. She was unaware that my parents intended to try to find investors for Fred's company during the trip. Alice said she had been concerned about Fred's spending patterns for some time, but every time she brought it up he would dismiss her. She also said she was disappointed about missing the wedding, but Fred had persuaded her this trip was absolutely essential for their futures. When I told her how much this was affecting me and how it was seriously dividing the family, she seemed really offended. Alice clearly seemed to be in a difficult position. She wanted to help her husband, but she also wanted to avoid being the cause my parents missed my wedding. I wasn't holding my breath when she promised to speak with Fred and try to find another way to handle things. If only Fred is stubborn. Knowing that Alice wasn't totally on board with this strategy made me feel a bit better, but I also realized that ultimately Fred was probably going to act any way he felt was best for him, regardless of how it affected the rest of us. Given everything that had transpired, I came to see that gathering the entire family and laying everything out on the table was the only way to fix this. Though I wasn't sure how it would turn out, I knew that it would only become worse if we avoided confronting this squarely. I thus convened a family conference. We needed to talk, I told Fred, Alice and my parents. No apologies, no delays. We chose to get together at my folks' house. Having Aaron at my side made me happy as he came to support me. You could see my folks were concerned since they were already here. Arriving soon afterward, Fred and Alice seemed defensive from the first. We all gathered in the living room, and I lost no time. I began by informing them I knew Fred's financial problems and the true purpose of the Europe vacation. Fred tried to seem as if it wasn't a big problem as my parents looked startled. I had none at all. I laid everything out without holdback. The years of favoritism, the never-ending bailouts, and how this was only the most recent illustration of Fred coming first over me. I told them I knew they wanted to assist Fred, but there had to be a line and this was it. I described how much this wedding meant to me. How much work I had put into organizing it and how heartbroken I was that they would be ready to toss it all for travel. I then took out the proof I had collected, copies of emails and messages between Fred and my parents debating the trip, the investors, and how they should keep it under wraps. I even kept a copy of the itinerary proving that the vacation fell during my wedding week. Fred was enraged that I had gone behind his back to obtain this information. My parents seemed to want to crawl under the couch. I gave no thought at all. I was not going to allow them to keep controlling me or guilt-inducing me about wanting to have my wedding as scheduled. Alice wasn't totally on board with the vacation, which also seemed to surprise Fred. He turned to her, but she only turned away to validate what I had said. Starting to yell, Fred accused me of attempting to ruin his life and said I was merely jealous since he was the successful one in the family. Saying she only wanted to help both of her children and didn't want to have to pick between us, my mom started crying. Silence from my dad really infuriated me. Usually the one to keep out of the drama, he would have been here to support me this time. At last Alice spoke up, saying she felt uneasy about missing the wedding given her knowledge of the whole truth. She claimed they had to come up with another approach to handle Fred's company issues outside of compromising family occasions. Fred seemed inclined toward conflict, but Alice held her ground. In that instant I did indeed start to respect her somewhat. But I still had to finish. They had to decide whether to give this trip first priority and miss my wedding or find another method to assist Fred that did not necessitate deserting me. I made it plain that I would not be changing the date. If they could not accept this, they were clearly choosing what they wanted. I let them decide over 24 hours. I warned them I would terminate relations with them should they decide not to show up for the wedding. I was not going to let them ruin my wedding day or allow them to treat me as though I did not matter. I even intimated that, should they compel me, I will publicly share the complete truth. I knew that his final requirement was for his possible investors to learn about his financial mess. This was my trump card. Fred was furious as my parents seemed as though they had been struck by a truck. Alice merely looked depressed. Though I was tired of being pushed about and of constantly putting Fred's wants second, I didn't want to do this. Telling them they knew how to get to me, I got up, walked out with Aaron. Things have been tough since that conference. Neither my parents nor Fred have heard from each other, hence I'm not sure what they will decide. I am thus simply waiting to find out whether my parents will at last prioritize me or whether this marks the end of our relationship as I know it. Update. My parents contacted out at last after what felt like an eternity. It was the longest 24 hours of my life, and as I waited for their judgment I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I knew nothing about what they would say when my phone rang, and part of me wanted not to hear it. My mother began her apology first. They had thought a lot, she stated following our last talk. They asked me to change the date and came to see how much this wedding meant to me and how cruel they had been. She said she hadn't thought about how much they were hurting me in the process and they had been overly preoccupied trying to save Fred from his most recent catastrophe. We chose to gather at my parents' house. Having Aaron at my side made me happy as he came to support me. You could see my folks were concerned since they were already here. Arriving soon afterward, Fred and Alice seemed defensive from the first. We all gathered in the living room, and I lost no time. I began by informing them I knew Fred's financial problems and the true purpose of the Europe vacation. Fred tried to seem as if it wasn't a big problem as my parents looked startled. I had none at all. I laid everything out without holdback. The years of favoritism, the never-ending bailouts, and how this was only the most recent illustration of Fred coming first over me. I told them I knew they wanted to assist Fred, but there had to be a line and this was it. I told them how much this wedding meant to me, how much work I had put into organizing it, and how heartbroken I felt that they would be ready to toss it all for travel. I then pulled out the material I'd collected, copies of emails and texts between Fred and my parents debating the trip, the investors, and how they should keep it under wraps. I even kept a copy of the itinerary proving that the vacation fell during my wedding week. Fred was enraged that I had gone behind his back to obtain this information. My parents seemed to want to crawl under the couch. I gave no thought at all. I was not going to allow them to keep controlling me or guilt-inducing me about wanting to have my wedding as scheduled. Alice wasn't totally on board with the vacation, which also seemed to surprise Fred. He turned to her, but she only turned away to validate what I had said. Starting to yell, Fred said I was merely jealous since he was the successful one in the family and accused me of wanting to ruin his life. Saying she only wanted to help both of her children and didn't want to have to pick between us, my mom started crying. Silence from my dad really infuriated me. Usually the one to keep out of the drama, he would have been here to support me this time. At last Alice spoke up, saying she felt uneasy about missing the wedding given her knowledge of the whole truth. She claimed they had to come up with another approach to handle Fred's company issues outside of compromising family occasions. Fred seemed inclined toward conflict, but Alice held her ground. In that instant I did indeed start to respect her somewhat. I still had to finish though. They had to decide whether to give this trip first priority and miss my wedding or find another method to assist Fred that did not necessitate deserting me. I made it plain that I would not be changing the date. If they could not accept this, they were clearly choosing what they wanted. I let them decide over 24 hours. I warned them I would terminate relations with them should they decide not to show up for the wedding. I was not going to let them ruin my wedding day or allow them to treat me as though I did not matter. I even intimated that, should they compel me, I will publicly share the complete truth. I knew that his final requirement was for his possible investors to learn about his financial mess. This was my trump card. Fred was furious as my parents seemed as though they had been struck by a truck. Alice merely looked depressed. Though I was tired of being pushed about and of constantly putting Fred's wants second, I didn't want to do this. Telling them they knew how to get to me, I got up, walked out with Aaron. Things have been tough since that conference. Neither my parents nor Fred have heard from each other, hence I'm not sure what they will decide. I am thus simply waiting to find out whether my parents will at last prioritize me or whether this marks the end of our relationship as I know it. Update. My parents contacted out at last after what felt like an eternity. It was the longest 24 hours of my life, and as I waited for their judgment I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I knew nothing about what they would say when my phone rang, and part of me wanted not to hear it. My mother began her apology first. They had thought a lot, she stated following our last talk. They asked me to change the date and came to see how much this wedding meant to me and how cruel they had been. She said she hadn't thought about how much they were hurting me in the process and they had been overly preoccupied trying to save Fred from his most recent catastrophe. We chose to gather at my parents' house. Having Aaron at my side made me happy as he came to support me. You could see my folks were concerned since they were already here. Arriving soon afterward, Fred and Alice seemed defensive from the first. We all gathered in the living room and I lost no time. I began by informing them I knew Fred's financial problems and the true purpose of the Europe vacation. Fred tried to seem as if it wasn't a big problem as my parents looked startled. I had none at all. I laid everything out without holdback. The years of favoritism, the never-ending bailouts, and how this was only the most recent illustration of Fred coming first over me. I told them I knew they wanted to assist Fred, but there had to be a line and this was it. I told them how much this wedding meant to me. How much work I had put into organizing it, and how heartbroken I felt that they would be ready to toss it all for travel. I then pulled out the material I had collected, copies of emails and texts between Fred and my parents debating the trip, the investors, and how they should keep it under wraps. I even kept a copy of the itinerary proving that the vacation fell during my wedding week. Fred was enraged that I had gone behind his back to obtain this information. My parents seemed to want to crawl under the couch. I gave no thought at all. I was not going to allow them to keep controlling me or guilt-inducing me about wanting to have my wedding as scheduled. Alice wasn't totally on board with the vacation, which also seemed to surprise Fred. He turned to her, but she only turned away to validate what I had said. Starting to yell, Fred said I was merely jealous since he was the successful one in the family and accused me of wanting to ruin his life. Saying she only wanted to help both of her children and didn't want to have to pick between us, my mom started crying. Silence from my dad really infuriated me. Usually the one to keep out of the drama, he would have been here to support me this time. At last Alice spoke up, saying she felt uneasy about missing the wedding given her knowledge of the whole truth. She claimed they had to come up with another approach to handle Fred's company issues outside of compromising family occasions. Fred seemed inclined toward conflict, but Alice held her ground. In that instant I did indeed start to respect her somewhat. I still had to finish though. They had to decide whether to give this trip first priority and miss my wedding or find another method to assist Fred that did not necessitate deserting me. I made it plain that I would not be changing the date. If they could not accept this, they were clearly choosing what they wanted. I let them decide over 24 hours. I warned them I would terminate relations with them should they decide not to show up for the wedding. I was not going to let them ruin my wedding day or allow them to treat me as though I did not matter. I even intimated that, should they compel me, I will publicly share the complete truth. I knew that his final requirement was for his possible investors to learn about his financial mess. This was my trump card. Fred was furious as my parents seemed as though they had been struck by a truck. Alice merely looked depressed. Though I was tired of being pushed about and of constantly putting Fred's wants second, I didn't want to do this. Telling them they knew how to get to me, I got up, walked out with Aaron. Things have been tough since the conference. Neither my parents nor Fred have heard from each other, hence I'm not sure what they will decide. I am thus simply waiting to find out whether my parents will at last prioritize me or whether this marks the end of our relationship as I know it. Update: my parents contacted out at last after what felt like an eternity. It was the longest 24 hours of my life, and as I waited for their judgment I couldn't concentrate on anything else. I knew nothing about what they would say when my phone rang, and part of me wanted not to hear it. My mother began her apology first. They had thought a lot, she stated following our last talk. They asked me to change the date and came to see how much this wedding meant to me and how cruel they had been. She said she hadn't thought about how much they were hurting me in the process and they had been overly preoccupied trying to save Fred from his most recent catastrophe. She then informed me they had decided to postpone their European vacation. After all, they planned to be at the wedding. Surprised, I had readied myself for the worst since I knew Fred would be chosen once more. It was such relief to hear them select my wedding over the trip. Next my dad answered on the phone to validate what my mother had said. He said he will be there for me on my big day and apologies for not acting sooner. He also said they needed to rethink how they had been managing things as they were beginning to see how much Fred's problems will impact the family. Though it was a start, it was not precisely the sincere apologies I had been expecting for. Most important was that they were traveling to the wedding. I appreciated their choice and our call concluded on an unexpectedly upbeat note. It felt for the first time in a long time, like perhaps things might improve between us. My parents started canceling the Europe trip right away after the decision was made. As you could expect, Fred's reaction to them telling him the trip was cancelled was not great. Fred was irate. Almost right away, he called to ask what I had said to our parents to cause them to postpone the trip. I told him I had just told them the truth, that their participation at my wedding meant more to me than anything else and that they had to decide what was more vital. Fred said I was trying to harm his prospects of turning his company around, therefore accusing me of influencing them. He even implied that, driven by jealousy, I was trying to ruin his life. Though it was the same old song and dance I had heard from him a million times before, this time I resisted letting it get to me. I gently informed him that our parents had decided upon their own course and that I had nothing to do with his difficulties. He could be furious with someone, not with me, if he wanted to be angry with someone. Fred then hung up on me and I didn't hear from him for some time. Though I was concerned about how this would impact the wedding day, I was also glad my parents were at last seeing the whole picture. They had decided to be by my side, and that was a positive direction. Over the next several days, my parents began to examine their connection with Fred and me closely. Several times my mother checked in with me and during one of those calls she admitted that she and my dad had been discussing their treatment of us growing up a lot. She said they had always considered Fred as the one who required more help and attention due to his problems, but in doing so they had neglected my needs and taken my freedom for granted. She told me they were starting to understand how much they had harmed me over the years by always putting Fred first. Apparently, my dad brought it up saying they should constantly support Aaron and me rather than only during difficult times. This would help us. Though it was not a 180, it was the first time I had ever heard them freely admit their bias. They committed themselves to treat both of their children equally and to be more present in my life. Though I was unsure of how much of it would really stick, it was a lot to absorb. They were real, and it gave me hope that maybe going forward our relationship may become better. Regarding Fred, he remained enraged, but my parents were resolved not to let that control their behavior anymore. They were beginning to realize that continually rescuing him was not benefiting anyone. Not him, not them, and most certainly not our family as a whole. I never would have imagined hearing them suggesting they would start imposing some limitations on him. Fred obviously did not lie down for any of this. He intensified his efforts to pull my parents back on his side when he understood they were serious about calling off the vacation and attending the wedding. He began threatening our parents in all kinds of ways, including maybe suing them should they not follow through with the trip. He said he would have to sue them for breach of contract, should they fail to assist him with his business. They had pledged to help him. Though I believe Fred knew deep down, it was really an empty threat, and it highlighted his extreme need for their acceptance. Not one of my parents backed down. They advised him that their choice was definite and he had to work out his own issues without depending much on them. For them, this was a significant step, and even if it was difficult for them to challenge Fred, they knew it was essential. Fred continued from there though. He began trying to get other family members on his side by corresponding with them. Claiming that I had coerced our parents into postponing the trip in order to undermine him, he presented me as the villain. With some relatives following Fred's story, it created some conflict inside the extended family. Most of them saw through it and backed my parents' choice to give my wedding top priority. Fred tried his best, but his strategies for manipulation were less successful than they had been. People seemed at last seeing him for who he truly was, a person who was always seeking a handout instead of owning his own mistakes. All of this drama clearly creates a gulf inside the family. Certain of our relatives are firmly on Fred's side, thinking that our parents ought to have honored their word to support him no matter what. Viewed as the spoiled younger sister exploiting her wedding to create distance between the family, they perceive me. Others, particularly those who have seen how Fred's actions have impacted my parents over the years, support their choice to go to the wedding and begin enforcing limits with him. These days, family get-togethers are more contentious and individuals are silently siding. Those who believe I'm in the wrong will judge me. I try not to let that affect me. Aaron has been fantastic in keeping me focused on the positives. That is, that our wedding preparations are still underway and that my parents will be here to assist us. Not easy, but is it? I worry about how this would impact our family over time. Will this divide ever close or will it keep widening till it is too great to span? I know I have to be steadfast in my decisions even though I have no solutions. Especially when it involves compromising my own happiness, I cannot keep stopping backwards to fit everyone else. About Fred, I have no idea what his future holds. He is still looking for a means to salvage his company. Without our parents' financial support, it will be difficult. Aaron and I are concentrating on our wedding and the life we are creating together in the interim. Although the path has been difficult, I hope the changes my family is undergoing will result in a better, more balanced relationship for all of us down the road. Update. Though all the drama preceded the wedding, I wanted this day to be flawless. The day of the wedding eventually arrived. Aaron and I had worked so hard to make it unique, I simply wanted everything to go without incident. Nancy, my maid of honor, who has been my best friend since college, kept reminding me that today was about Aaron and me and that nothing else counted. At the site, a lovely garden estate, Aaron and I had fallen in love with the moment we first laid eyes on it. We were ready. Though I had not spoken to Fred since our previous chat, I knew my folks were on their way. Not sure whether he would show up or not, and the idea of a possible confrontation was weighing on me. The wedding was lovely, and I felt as luckiest person on earth as we exchanged our vows. Looking over at my parents in the front row, I saw my mum cleaning away tears. That was a little but important moment that gave me hope that perhaps we were headed in the correct direction after all. The ceremony itself lived out all I had hoped for. We kept it private, with just close family and friends, and the officiant did a fantastic job of making it seem heartfelt and personal. We snapped pictures in the yard following the ceremony. The setting was really lovely, the light was perfect. While things were still a little awkward, my parents joined us for some family photographs and it was obvious they were really delighted for us. They were trying, and it meant a lot to me. The welcome speeches were moving when it came time. My dad even shocked me with a moving toast in which he apologized for the recent conflict and said he was really pleased of the woman I'd grown to know. For him, it was a significant step and seemed like a fresh start even though it did not wipe out all that had transpired. Fred and Alice arrived just when I believed the day was running without any problems. They hadn't RSVP'd, so I wasn't sure whether they would show at all. They entered the midst of the reception and momentarily the place went quiet. Fred seemed to be carrying proof. He initially went up to our parents, had a little whispered talk with them and then moved over to Aaron and myself. Alice held back, clearly uneasy. Fred congratulated us when he got here, but he was obviously not really here to rejoice. He was there to make a point. Right in the middle of our wedding reception, he wanted to strike up a discussion on his company problems. Even on my wedding day, he seemed unable to tolerate not being the focal point of attention. Aaron moved in before I could speak. Fred was gently reminded by him that today was about celebrating our marriage and that this was not the time or place for business. Fred did not find it appealing. Aaron was not having it as he tried to protest. Fred gave up and turned away finally, but harm was done. I made every effort to ignore it and savor the remainder of the night. We danced, cut the cake and hung about with our loved ones. Though Fred tried to create drama, the evening closed on a good note. Officially, I married the love of my life. Nothing Fred did could take that away from me. Regarding Fred, his life has veered somewhat differently. My parents faced a tough choice following the wedding. They agreed to stop contributing financially. They came to see that continuously rescuing him was not doing him any good and that it was time for him to pay for his mistakes. Fred's company soon closed without our parents' assistance. He looked for additional investors, but those offers dropped through without the trip to Europe. He eventually had to start bankruptcy filings. He had trouble swallowing this harsh pill, hence his pride suffered greatly. At last Alice, who had been mounting annoyance with Fred's financial irresponsibility, reached her breaking point. She picked the children and left him, moving in with her parents as she worked out her future moves. Fred is learning to live alone and must start over in his life. Although I enjoy his demise less, I do believe this is the wake-up call he required. Perhaps now he will begin to take charge of his own life instead of depending on others to resolve issues. Only time will let us know. For Aaron and me, at last we can concentrate on our future free from all the familial strife. We intend to shortly start a family. We had to postpone our European honeymoon as well since all the wedding drama interfered. It seems like the ideal approach to honor our entering into this new phase of life. I want to pause to thank everyone on Reddit for their guidance and encouragement along this insane trip. Your statements gave me the will to defend myself and make some difficult decisions I might have otherwise backed off from. Though it wasn't simple, I'm rather happy I stayed with my guns. I gave my sister-in-law a pregnancy book, unknowingly exposing her affair with my husband's friend. Now the family's in chaos. We know each other since our husbands, Charlie, 26M, sister-in-law Cheryl, 28F, and I, 26F, attended high school together. Charlie and I were in the same year and are sweethearts from high school. We began dating our sophomore year and have been together ever since. With Cheryl, things have always been different. She's always despised me, hence I would want to say we were high school nemesis as the sentiment was reciprocal. She was a senior 2 years older than us, yet that didn't stop her from being absolutely rude to me. She was a vicious bully in high school, and regrettably, not much has changed since then. Only I could stand up to her back in high school. Everyone else was terrified since Cheryl and her buddies were infamous for mistreating anyone they came across. Some people even moved schools because of their terrible deeds or spreading of tales. They were that horrible. I am not exaggerating. I never feared her, even before Charlie and I began dating. I had always been acquainted with her brother. Cheryl didn't seem like this undefeatable entity to me as he and I had been great friends and I often stayed out at his house. She seemed like any other child. That's how everyone ought to have seen her, in my opinion, but high school can be weird. Still, I wasn't scared of Cheryl. Once I started dating Charlie, I became even more bold. She probably felt powerless over me, even as a senior, and this disturbed her. She once did something truly terrible to me. As usual, one morning upon opening my locker, dead fish and a lot of fish water dropped on me. Head to toe I was covered in nasty, sticky slime. I had to go home since I was so offended and it was embarrassing and demoralizing. Though I couldn't prove Cheryl was behind it, I felt it had to be her. We had a severe verbal argument in the cafeteria the day before. I labeled her a brain-dead zombie in front of her friends, some of whom even laughed. She did this to me since she couldn't let that go. Charlie felt it had to be his sister too, and their argument turned out really intense. He managed to convince her to back off even though he cannot get her to apologize to me. Though Charlie and I have been together for years, Cheryl and I never spoke once that incident occurred. But once Charlie and I got married last year, my in-laws informed Cheryl and me that since we were now family, we had to try more to get along. Some nosy relatives had been questioning our lack of communication or simply glancing at each other during family events, which embarrassed them. Having gone far from high school, I was ready to let the past pass. I agreed to be polite. Cheryl and I shook hands like grown-ups. Though we chose to be friendly at family functions rather than avoid one another, we were not going to be best friends overnight. Things appeared to be going good a year ago. We would say hi and then go on whenever we ran across each other. We had left the bad blood behind us, so I assumed, but then she became cruel once more. She showed up empty-handed on my birthday some few months earlier, which was okay. She then told me she was actually teaching me cooking classes and emailed me an online program she had bought at the party itself while I was opening everyone's gifts. She said it was meant to be a joke, but nobody else laughed and I didn't either. For background, I had done all the cooking for the day alone, hence it was quite nasty. I have always loved working in the kitchen and experimenting even though I am not a professional chef. Since childhood, cooking has been a pastime of mine. Her comment, she was going to give me cooking lessons, was quite nasty, right after she had eaten a whole dinner I had made. As Charlie had pointed out, everyone knew I produced everything. I took it to heart since I had worked hard and woke up at 6:30 a.m. to make sure everything was perfect. No one truly laughed even once she explained it as a joke. She persisted even though several people laughed merely to let her drop it. She kept insisting she was kidding, but she really thought I should have culinary classes since everything she had eaten that day made her feel sick and she kept saying she might throw up at any time. She also made jokes on how everyone should clear the path to the bathroom should she have to barf. She was truly approaching my last nerve at the end of the evening, and I felt relief when she left. She didn't even bother bidding farewell after spending the whole day cracking jokes at the expense of my cooking abilities, which, by the way, aren't particularly horrible. Charlie and everyone else told me the food was fantastic, hence I have no idea what she was talking about. To be honest, I had begun to believe she might be a decent human being, but after my birthday I chose to resume neglect of her. She obviously still lived in her high school mean girl form, and someone like her had no right to be friendly with me. Cheryl had her birthday last week. She had to invite me even if we are not getting along since I asked her to my party. Charlie traveling without me would have been strange, hence she invited me in order to maintain family peace. That proved to be rather a blunder. I chose to let her taste her own medication. Based on a few weeks old overheard talk, I handed her the book What to Expect When You're Expecting *. For background, Cheryl came up to our place 3 weeks ago. She insisted on talking to Charlie in private and appeared depressed. She didn't realize I was standing immediately outside listening in on their conversation. I left the room to let them chat in the living room. Though I knew it wasn't moral, I was intrigued and wanted to listen in so Charlie could cover for me when she left. Cheryl was pregnant, per what I understood, but she was truly concerned as she felt unprepared to be pregnant. She had come to consult her brother. Charlie advised her to talk to her spouse even if she felt unprepared. Given that the pregnancy was early, they may discuss ending it should she still feel unprepared. He reasoned that chatting to her husband could allow her to relax and take better control of the circumstances. Cheryl left after briefly consoling her. I told Charlie what I had overheard as she left. We both agreed she had been behaving oddly. She appeared strange coming to us instead of her husband even if she wasn't ready for a baby. She said some things that nearly sounded like she needed Charlie's assistance in covertly ending the pregnancy, but he wasn't ready to engage in such dishonest behavior. He thought her husband ought to know before any decisions were taken. Though ultimately the woman's decision is hers, we felt her spouse at least deserved to be included in the conversation given she was married. We had not heard anything else regarding her pregnancy since that day. Still, I decided to pull a small practical joke on her and handed her that book. Fortunately, she did not unwrap the gifts in front of every visitor at the party, yet it made no difference since the book truly got her into trouble. Her husband might thus eventually find himself leaving her. She called me in tears the day after her birthday, stating I had destroyed her life and charged me with purposefully undermining her marriage. What she was talking about eluded me. She was so enraged and was screaming at me, so I couldn't even get her to clarify what was happening. She hung up silently, done, without further word. Following that phone chat, my in-laws got in touch and reported exactly what had happened. She apparently had been unwrapping all of her gifts with her husband and then that book surfaced. I had even left a note stating that Charlie and I wished to congratulate her and affixed it to the book. She hadn't told anyone yet about the pregnancy, but I wanted to play about with her the way she had done on my birthday. I had no clue it would have such dire results. She could not have become pregnant by her spouse since he was sterile. This was unknown to her. She apparently may have been cheating now, and her spouse had already shown suspicion. That book served to validate his misgivings. Though none of the family members know for sure whether she had been cheating or not, let's be honest, She most certainly wasn't biologically incapable of having children. In any case, that is not my line of work. All I know is she had come to Charlie thinking he would assist her covertly in ending the pregnancy. Now we know why she wanted to keep it a secret and why she was so queasy when she spoke with him. She cannot let that happen if she wanted to end the pregnancy without her husband knowing, since she is a homemaker and everything she spends might be followed by him. Even pulling money would be suspect, as it would be a large sum that would beg problems. Cheryl made a great effort to persuade her husband that I was merely teasing and that nothing was happening. He disagreed when she claimed the book was only a hoax. Unless there was some truth to it, he doubted Charlie and I would pull such a joke. He then requested Cheryl to leave, and today she lives with her parents. My in-laws asked me to talk to her husband and persuade him that I had only handed her the book to play about with. Given his suspicions of her adultery, they believed I might get him to approach her and fix things. Her fidelity now begged additional questions. I disagree, since they think I should not have done what I did and that I'm at blame. For the past week, my in-laws and I have been at conflict. Given her behavior at my birthday celebration, I believe I was justified in what I did. I don't think I should accept the fall for this, as I had no idea it would cause so much trouble. She most certainly should have been faithful to her husband if she wanted peace in her marriage. To hold me responsible for it is unfair. Charlie has the same sentiment. Though he believes the present was a little excessive given the events of my birthday celebration, he does not advise me to apologize to Cheryl or even talk to her husband about any of this. Saying we should resolve things since her marriage is in jeopardy, my in-laws keep fighting with us. They believe that should we fail to persuade her spouse that this was only a joke, the family may suffer from divorce. She most certainly was cheating, though, if she was pregnant when she spoke with Charlie and her husband is sterile. Should that be the case, we want no involvement whatsoever or defense of her. Apart from that, the book was only vengeance for the jokes she cracked at my birthday. I had no clue it would result in anything like this. I have nothing to be guilty over. It is not like I did it on intention. Still, they all seem to be behaving as though I'm the villain, the mastermind behind a sinister scheme meant to wipe her off target or otherwise. It's very strange. Suddenly I'm questioning my choices. AITA kindly sent a pregnancy book as a birthday present to my sister-in-law. Update 1, Hi. So it's been 2 weeks since I handed Cheryl that book, and up until now we have avoided talking to her husband. From what we know, she had been cheating on her husband with another man, hence going forward we will also keep to that. Though I'm not sure specifically, I believe it's someone from high school. Worse, I believe it's someone from Charlie's acquaintance group, since a few days ago we spoke, more of an argument, on the phone with Cheryl. She stated it was quite unjust that she was being held accountable for all of this, but Charlie's friend was equally culpable. However, he wasn't getting any criticism and was even unwilling to defend her. Though we don't know exactly who she's referring to, Charlie has quite a few married pals from high school. That's not really our main concern. Managing my in-laws has proved somewhat challenging. I don't believe they have done it yet. They insist I should chat to her spouse before he files for divorce. He keeps telling he'll do it, but if he truly wants to split, he should have done it now. What he is waiting for is unknown to me. Anyway, they believe they still have time and that, if I only talk to him, I could be able to persuade him not to leave her by stating I was only doing a practical joke. I have nothing to do with all of this drama, hence I refuse to allow myself to get caught in it. Though they have been making it somewhat challenging for us, I simply want to back off and relax. Thus, yesterday we had to make a really difficult choice and ultimately block all 3 of them since they were slightly disturbing us. We can't keep talking to them, trying to help them to grasp where we are coming from. Over 2 weeks have passed. She was truly a bully to me in high school, yet many of the people in the comments on my first post felt it was unacceptable of me to do what I did. She had been cheating, hence I doubt I have to feel guilty about what I did. Still, folks are free to disagree with me in this free nation. Update 2. Hi. 3 days have passed since our last report and at last we were able to identify the person she had been having the affair with. Charlie's friend she mentioned turned out to be among his closest pals. This surprised me somewhat a bit. Because his family was acting somewhat irrationally, Charlie had been complaining to his pals about how challenging things had been for him the past 2 weeks. I suppose his pal chose to come clean as he couldn't tolerate it anymore. He called Charlie and told him he had been seeing Cheryl in an affair. Apparently, all of this began roughly 1 year ago, just around our wedding's time. For us, it was really startling and we are still trying to understand it. Charlie is quite close to every one of his buddies, hence we never expected a betrayal like this. From what we have seen, this guy, who has been married for 3 years, and his wife seem to be truly in love. I personally know the woman. She talks endlessly about her husband. Right now, I just feel somewhat sorry for her. We decided straight away to cut him off, and right now we are not telling anyone since we do not want to discredit him. But we will most certainly not be entertaining this going forward. We even told him to tell his wife straightforward since she is the one who really needs to know the truth. Nobody should ever have to go through what this is like. He also supplied us with evidence of Cheryl cheating on her spouse alongside him. We have come to the conclusion that, at least nothing good would come of it if we allowed ourselves to be pulled into this play. Hence, our last call is keeping them blocked. To what we know, they have not discussed this with anyone else. Everyone still believes we get along well with my in-laws and that Charlie's relatives know nothing about the turmoil underway behind the scene. Given the circumstances, which would be somewhat embarrassing for the family, I'm betting they are keeping things under wraps in order to protect their name. Though I suppose it's a surface motivation, I value their great concern for their perceived image. We don't want to deal with other people right now and it's helping us keep everything secret. As it is, we have sufficient on our plates. Charlie's cousin is getting married in a few weeks, hence they will have to go to that wedding. We're not sure whether my in-laws or Cheryl will be there given the present circumstances, but if they decide to go, boy, that will be quite strange for everyone concerned. Update 3. Hey, practically 2 months after my last update is here. Not truly intriguing events occurred in these previous 2 months. We sort of forgot about my in-laws once we cut them off. Their end also lacked news, hence they did not try to get in touch with us. We thought perhaps Cheryl and her husband had been able to sort things out as neither a pregnancy announcement nor a divorce announcement was made. Good for them, then I suppose. Charlie and I know that adultery never stays secret, thus we don't really care about what's happening in their marriage. When her husband finds out the truth, she will most certainly receive what she deserves. Regarding the pregnancy, I suppose she stopped it some way. In any case, we didn't bother ourselves with it and kept to our own business as whatever happened is not of importance to us. That was till we visited his family at his cousin's wedding some few days ago. Including Cheryl's spouse and my in-laws, all of them were present. Once we arrived, we acted as though the others did not exist and neglected even greeting each other. Clearly, the rest of the family noticed it right away. People began posing all kinds of inquiries to us. Though they attempted to be subdued about it, we knew they were gathering gossip. But we simply tried to keep to ourselves so nobody would disturb us. We did not entertain anyone. Cheryl, on the other hand, followed a different strategy. She chose to blab her mouth off even though we knew the facts. We were ready to put up with her since we were 3 days at the hotel and it was just a matter of time till we returned home. But she began to say such terrible things about us that we had to confront her about it. Sadly, that resulted in a somewhat public confrontation between our families during the rehearsal dinner. It was someone else's wedding, hence I regret it as Charlie and his cousin got along well. Now one of the events was totally destroyed thanks to us. Naturally, following such a spectacle, we had to leave before the wedding even started since we couldn't stay much longer. We have since apologized multiple times to his cousin. She has indicated she is cool with it, but we still feel quite horrible about what happened. Cheryl and my in-laws, on the other hand, were really in charge of generating all of this turmoil, yet they hardly bothered to apologize to Charlie's cousin. At least we departed of our own will. The other family members practically urged them to go after we departed. Serves them right, they were due this kind of shame. It was pretty fulfilling for both of us when Charlie's cousin told him about it the day before her wedding as we were phoning her apologies. Cheryl had been telling all the family, and everyone who would listen that we had tried to destroy her marriage by lying about her adultery, therefore leading us to a fight in the first place. She said we failed in trying to undermine her marriage. Clearly, that was untrue since, as we indicated, her marriage life is not something we give much thought to. Choosing to live with a lady like her husband had shown how dumb he was. We were even ready to let that slip since we were attending someone else's wedding and we wanted to avoid starting a scene. She then began asserting, though, that we were the ones having an open marriage and that I wanted to get close to her husband, which explained why I'd always been so envious of her. We couldn't live with that. We resolved to face her then. I mentioned all the evidence, the screenshots we had gotten from Charlie's friend, which I had been saving to myself for so long on the evening of the rehearsal dinner. Charlie and I now felt, nonetheless, that it was at last time to defend ourselves. She could not simply say anything she pleased and get away with it. Her husband can no longer ignore reality since he at last knows it. His call is whether or not he takes the correct decision for himself and leaves her. At least now there will be no more questioning of us. At least we left on our own with courtesy, avoiding being thrown out as others were. Though we are now attempting to move over it, it was just a really awful few days. The whole family knows Cheryl's type of person she is. Thus I just feel sympathy for her husband as he decided to mend things with her even though it was useless. I truly hope he gets the bravery to escape. Should he decide to remain with her, then he just has absolutely no decency or self-respect. We eventually decided to go ahead and sabotage her marriage as she had been accusing us of for so long. She will now have to pay for trying to bully us. How she planned to get away with all of this is unknown. Since high school, Charlie and I have literally been standing up to Mom. I believe we have made it really evident that we are not scared of her. We were not thus going to back down either right now. She ought to have known that. Update 4. Consequently, it is happening. 2 weeks have passed since our return from Charlie's cousin's wedding, and today I at last heard from a couple of cousins Cheryl wrote about her and her husband divorcing. She said that it was a mutual decision to split ways and urged everyone to honor their privacy during this trying period. What a weight of lies this baggage carries. She's behaving as people weren't present at the wedding and like her entire family isn't aware of what actually happened and the real reason they're divorcing, hence I'm not sure why she's acting like we all already know, hence we will definitely be honoring her privacy. No one has to ask her what happened. The talk began when Charlie told some of his pals, thus even her friends have learned about it. We regret nothing about what we did. She had been spewing so much garbage about us in the past that we hardly need to feel guilty about what we did or regret her. Should she go low, we will go lower as well. Period is. She has always been a bully, thus we believe we did the correct thing as someone needed her down a peg. We are happy to be the ones doing that. If that makes some people view us as the bad guys, that is okay with us. For example, my in-laws have chosen to totally cut us off from their life. They even had their attorney get in touch with Charlie to let him know they had opted to avoid us and most likely would cut us off from the inheritance as well. As like we were going to learn that and start begging for pardon right away. That is not going to transpire. We are not money-based sellouts that one could purchase. Besides, since Cheryl hasn't worked since she graduated and has been depending on either her parents or her husband, they should most likely retain all their money to themselves, presumably for the rest of their lifetime. Thus, yes, they may keep their money and Cheryl with herself by all means. We behaved what we believed to be right. We are not going to act as though we are sorry for it. Right now, Charlie and I are quite happy with our life. We have no interest in anyone else. Years after my brother evicted me for his growing family, he now wants to move into my home. Am I the asshole for refusing to help? Alright, this is a long one, and I honestly need an outside perspective. Several years ago, I, 28F, was living with my older brother Tom, 37M, and his wife Karen, 34F. I had just graduated from college, had a pretty bad job at the time, and was struggling to make ends meet. Tom had a house with a guest room, and he told me I could stay with them for a while until I got back on my feet. I was beyond grateful, and I made sure to help out however I could, cooking, cleaning, buying groceries when I could afford it. Fast forward about 6 months. I finally landed a decent job and was able to contribute more financially. I was on my way to becoming independent. Around this time, Karen got pregnant. At first, everything seemed fine, but then Karen started dropping subtle hints that they needed more space for the baby. The hints soon turned into direct conversations about how they needed the guest room for a nursery. Tom assured me that I could stay until I found a new place, but Karen was clearly becoming more agitated by the day. Then, one afternoon, I came home from work to find all my stuff packed up and sitting in the hallway. Tom told me that Karen had decided they needed me out ASAP. No discussion, no warning. He tried to soften the blow by saying they'd help me with a security deposit on a new place, but it was humiliating and hurtful. I ended up couch surfing for a couple of months until I could afford a small studio apartment. It was a really tough time for me, both emotionally and financially. I'll never forget the feeling of being thrown out of my own brother's house like that. Fast forward to now. Tom's life has taken a turn. His business went under, and they're having financial issues. Last week, he called me out of the blue, sounding desperate. They're being evicted from their house and have nowhere to go. He asked if he, Karen, and their 2 kids could stay with me for a few months, while they get back on their feet. Here's the thing. I'm doing much better now. I have a good job, a nice apartment, and I've been saving for a house. I can technically accommodate them, but the thought of letting them move in after what they did to me years ago just doesn't sit right. I told Tom I needed to think about it, and ever since, he's been sending me guilt-trippy texts about how family is supposed to be there for each other, and how they have nowhere else to go. Even my parents have gotten involved, saying I should let them stay with me because they're family, and what happened years ago is in the past. But here's the kicker. Karen hasn't apologized once for how they treated me. Not a word. She didn't even acknowledge it when we spoke on the phone. It's like they expect me to just forget about it and welcome them with open arms. I'm torn. Part of me feels like I should help because they are my family, but the other part of me feels like this is karmic justice. Am I the asshole for refusing to let them stay with me after what they did? Or should I let the past go and help them out in their time of need? My fiance's best friend ruined my life. How we stood up for each other and cut off the toxic relationship. My fiance has the biggest heart, would literally give you the shirt, pants, and hat off his body if you asked for it. He's a recovering people pleaser, and I get it because I also used to be a people pleaser. We've been together for 5+ years. A few months ago, I started picking up on his best friend making some not so nice comments towards me. I'm trying to be vague, but let's just say this friend is the type to read who in the room would be most affected by being picked on, and then he picks and picks and picks on them until they can't take it anymore. Nobody ever really holds him accountable for this, and unfortunately I have somehow become his favorite target. I tried to put up with these comments, but it started getting really elaborate. The friend would make up lies about me saying things I never said. He once called me in front of all our friends, my fiance included, just to yell "you're a bad friend" into the phone and then hang up. There's so much to it that I can't share because I'm trying to be somewhat anonymous. It started having an effect on me and my mental health, and I ended up having a full breakdown where I told my fiance how much this was all starting to hurt me. The first time I broke down over this, he said he would talk to his friend about teasing/messing with me less. He then told me his friend was sorry and that he'd be keeping an ear out for any other comments and he'd jump to my defense if it happened again. A few weeks later I had a second breakdown over all this. The situation itself is hitting a very specific childhood trauma trigger for me, and he admitted that his friend didn't actually apologize. He actually said he was sorry I was too sensitive to understand his humor. At that point I told my fiance my friendship with this person is over and I want zero contact from here on out, even if it means I have to miss out on events and parties that I'd otherwise love to go to. He agreed with me that all of this is being done with the intention to get a rise out of me, and that even if we tried to get through to this friend he's so diabolical that we could never fully trust him to not treat me at least a little bit shitty. My fiance kept asking if this meant he had to quit the project they're working on. I told him I would never tell him he had to because I know how much it means to him, but in all honesty, the fact that this person is treating me so poorly that I'm having physical stress reactions isn't enough for him to want to cut this person off does hurt a lot. The fact that it isn't a deal breaker for him is probably always going to sting a little. He's not confrontational at all and I always knew that, but it's not about confrontation. It's about standing in my corner. And I can't spend the rest of my life with someone who isn't in my corner. This friend is getting married to my best friend in a few months and we're both supposed to be in the wedding, but I really have no clue how. I get a literal knot in my stomach anytime his name is even mentioned now. I have seen this friend one time since all of this came to a head and he was so over the top nice to me that it came off as cocky. I had the second breakdown a few days afterwards because I realized I'm possibly going to spend the rest of my life on edge and on guard anytime this person is even somewhat in my vicinity, even if they aren't actively fucking with me. I don't know how to come to terms with the fact that my fiance was willing to lie to me on his shitty friend's behalf, but he's not willing to stand in my corner against him. I think it'll always hurt. This guy was supposed to be the best man in our wedding, and as a result we haven't been talking much about wedding plans. I think if he's still planning on this friend being in our wedding I may have to call it off for my own sanity, and that sucks so bad. This is fucking eating me alive. I love my fiance so much. I love his big heart and the way he loves all of it. But he loves some truly wretched people and I don't know if he'll enforce any boundaries with those people before the lack of boundaries becomes too much for me to handle. I'm just hurt. And hurting. And I just want whatever outcome to play out so I can stop feeling so guilty and awful all the time. Relevant comments. Has OP's fiancé defended her in any way? Not necessarily. He's non-confrontational but he knows the behavior isn't sustainable. He agrees with me that this friend is awful with the intention of being awful. They have a project they've been a part of together for over a decade and it means the universe to him and that's the biggest factor in all of this. He'd more than likely have to give that up. This entire situation is dog shit and there are zero winners, except for the asshole. What does her best friend say about this behavior? I have my own feelings towards what she's going through. I think she's being love-bombed and gaslit, and I've seen some proof of it with my own eyes. She was there for the bad friend comment and kind of defended him. I know she's so love-struck that she's probably going to choose him and it kills me, but I'm trying really hard to step back in a way that doesn't totally burn my bridge with her in the end. When he gets that ring on her finger I have a feeling he will be a different man to her and she'll need support. I'll be there when she needs me. When told she should walk away. Don't think I'm ready to make my peace with this comment quite yet, but I hear it and I'm trying. Right before I met my fiancé I had just cut out a vast majority of people, including one of my closest friends and a blood relative, for making me feel the same shitty small way my fiance's friend makes me feel. It's so much harder to burn those rotten bridges when they're not yours to burn. That's a lot easier to say when you have no stakes in this, my guy. I'm in love with my partner, and I know that this is eating him up just as much as it is me. Trust me when I say he holds himself accountable for his role in this, and we've had many in-depth conversations about how his friend will forever be this way so long as everybody in his life enables him to be. It's hard to cut someone off even when they deserve it. I'm trying to show my fiancé as much grace as I can because I know how hard it is to give up on someone you always hoped would grow out of their awful behavior. Asked if there's any unresolved conflicts. No, my friend and I haven't ever really had any conflict. Me and her were hanging at my place while our partners got ready to head to hers, and they ding-dong ditched us twice. I heard the door a third time and ignored it because I assumed it was them again, and then the asshole called me, speakerphone from my friend's phone, and told me it was a mutual friend that lived in the building and was looking for them for support. I tried to jokingly call them out for ding-dong ditching, but that was when he yelled, "You're a bad friend," into the phone and hung up. I was really embarrassingly distraught by this and expressed how it was affecting me, and my friend left an hour or two later after we sat in silence. I found out later from my fiancé that all our mutual friends, including him, were in the car and heard that conversation. And everyone felt tense, but nobody said anything to him. It wasn't a joke and wasn't taken as a joke by anyone involved, not just me. After the friend who was knocking on the door went to find them, the asshole called me just to make me feel bad for not opening the door. I could hear the friend that knocked saying, "Hey man, not a big deal, it's fine," real quiet in the background, but no one else spoke up. Trust me, I know these examples seem like they shouldn't be getting to me, but this guy is poking every spot he can on me until he finds one that gives him a reaction, and then he digs and digs. It's hard not to be triggered when his literal intention is so trigger me. I know this isn't going to go on much longer. Update. Never thought I'd actually update this account out of sheer fucking embarrassment, but I wanted to share this for those who encouraged me to put myself first. I want you all to know my partner absolutely came through and protected me in this. We spent all this time since my last post up until last week communicating and trying to find a resolution, and walking through how it got this bad. He took a lot of accountability for that. This is not a case of me giving in. He understands fully that this has only got so bad because it's never been handled correctly, and he had a major hand in that. There were so many more layers to this than a Reddit post ever could have conveyed. The bottom line is we are closer than ever, and after a lot of talking, we decided on my partner sending a firm but not unkind message to his friend explaining the behaviors, explaining that they were hurting his partner, and that it needed to stop. He asked to write up the first draft and we could go over it together to try to perfect it. Reddit, please know the first draft my partner wrote was so spot on what I needed to read that it instantly shifted us into us versus the problem mode when we'd been stuck butting heads for weeks. He laid everything out so clearly and in ways that we hadn't discussed, so I know it came from him. We had to tone down a lot of the big emotions. We really truly gave the message its best shot to address the situation without being hostile. We knew the response would be bad no matter what, but I don't think anything could have fucking prepared us. This man went full scorched earth and blew up everything almost immediately. He insulted my partner. He told him these events didn't happen the way I claim they do. He demanded they meet up alone with a mediator. He even threatened to reach out to my partner's parents to fill them in, which is probably the moment we stopped taking his responses seriously. All of us are almost in our 30s. If once wasn't enough, he threatened it twice. We actually had to call them and warn them that he would be showing up at their place later this week and not to open the door. There's still a good chance he'll attempt it. We stayed respectful throughout all of this, which I feel good about. We didn't stoop to his level. We didn't insult anyone. We asked for basic human respect and somehow it blew up spectacularly. In the end, we both received a massive wall of text from my now ex-best friend, fully backing up her man and telling her side of the story, which is so insanely far off from what actually happened that all I can do is laugh. We've been shifting from crying to being dumbstruck to just straight up laughing because of the absurdity. I went into this thinking she was brainwashed, but it turns out I was wrong. They're a perfect match. I wish them all the best. I am sending them one last message setting the record straight, which my partner and I decided together was the best approach apart from just ghosting, before moving on from this entirely. I'm going to make it very clear this is done. Zero contact indefinitely and I will never look back. My partner and I both deserve way better friends and we both see that so clearly now. I am so fucking glad I learned my friend's true colors before we dropped $800 on a hotel for their wedding. Thank you to everyone who was kind. Not only did I put myself first in the end, but my partner did too. We're going to take this week in stride and process it all, Grieve the friendships we once thought were forever, and at the end of the week we have a conveniently timed vacation to my partner's family cottage. I think we're gonna come out of this stronger, because we already feel it. Again, thank you to those who had something productive to say. And I've made my peace with all the rest. I guess if the guy does something else outlandish, maybe I'll update, but for now, this chapter is closed and I'm so ready for it to start collecting dust. Relevant comments. When told victims of abusers do a 180 in their behavior to explain why her best friend is acting the way she is and chose the ex-friend's side, I definitely went into this thinking exactly what you just laid out. But I refuse to set myself on fire to keep her warm, and the shit she said in her message about my partner is irredeemable. She can never be a part of our lives again after what was said, out of respect for me and my partner, even if any part of me wanted to hold out hope for her. I hope this is a wake-up call for her, but it won't be me on the other line. Appreciate you and your kind words, friend. This has been hell, but I think we're both just glad to have an outcome. I'll always have love for her, but it will be from a very large distance, and even if by some miracle we reconnect, we will never be as close as we once were without some intense conversations and a lot of growth, maybe not even then. I don't see that being the case for a very long time. I've made my peace with that. How is the fiancé handling the business with the ex-friend as well as he can? He stepped down. He is going to find another project eventually, I know it. This has been so impossibly hard on both of us, but I know it's hitting him a bit more than me right now, and I'm making sure to prioritize him and remind him he can feel that pain and mourn what was, and it's not an insult to me at all if that makes sense. I know what this meant to him. He did give it up. I'm so sad he had to, but I'm grateful to him for putting his foot down. He's going to be okay, just needs some time to grieve and process. DNA confirmed I have an 18-year-old daughter living in the US. I don't know where to start, how to tell my family, or how to meet her. And yeah, I feel just as you would imagine. But it gets worse. She lives in the US, I'm in Europe. I don't know how to do this and really need advice. So what happened is that months ago I got a call from a US number. Didn't answer since I don't know anyone there. Then again the same day, so I answered ready to yell at some scammer. A girl on the other side introduces herself and just says that she thinks I might be her father. That was the first thing she said. Hi, my name is Jane and I think you might be my father. Fake name. Obviously I told her I don't have any children and that she has the wrong number. But then she drops a name I haven't heard in, you guessed it, 18 years. Back around that time I was in the US for a year on a job exchange with our sister company. Met a woman there and we hooked up for maybe a few months. I remember buying condoms after meeting her, but I can't remember if we used them every time. Anyway, I gave her my non-US number but never heard from her again. The girl on the phone asks me if my name is OP and I freak and almost hang up on her. She tells me more about her mother and I just sit there like an idiot. She'd found my name and number in her mother's diary, and now as she turned 18 she wanted to contact me. She lives with her relatives now since her mother is unable to take care of herself for some reason. I still don't know the details there. She asked me if I'd be willing to do an ancestry DNA test and even offered to pay for it. She ends by saying I should think about it and ask if she can call me again. I just say sure and we hang up. I swear I was about to faint right there and then. The whole conversation lasted only like 5 minutes. I end up taking the test and we talk a few more times. The test took forever, but yesterday she sent me a screenshot of her profile matching 50% of mine. I mean, that's just it, right? We haven't spoken since. Just messaged some. I lied and told her I've been busy and we'll talk later, which now makes me feel like an ass. Up until this point I've kept it together, holding on to the thought that I'm probably not the dad, but now I can't deny it. It's probably been half my life since I last cried. I haven't told anyone this. I was kinda hoping the DNA test would come back negative and then I wouldn't have to. How to even break this to my family? I just know they'll all want her number so they can call her and then they would start flying over to see her or bringing her here. They're really pushy like that. My mom is going to freak out. I don't see my family more than a few times a year, but we'll all get together during Easter. Should I do it then with all of them at once or one at a time? I have a picture of Jane, but not much more info than what I've written here. I'm the youngest sibling and now I suddenly have the oldest of the cousins in the next generation. And I never wanted kids at all. I just don't like them and hate being tied up. Even had a vasectomy since then. And that's the easy part. The real problem is what to say to Jane. Can some sane person give an example of what to say? I've promised to call her tomorrow. Has anyone discovered they have an unknown child? If so, what did you do? How did it go? How did you connect? What happened when you met for the first time? What did your family say? I'm a bit embarrassed by this, but is there any risk of me having to pay child support retroactively? I can probably afford it, but I don't really want to. TLDR, got contacted by a young girl claiming to be my daughter, DNA later confirmed. Need help on how to proceed and what to say to her and my family. Edit. I apologize for the abomination of the text above. I blame the alcohol. Some seem to have the impression that I and/or my family are wealthy. This is not so. I wrote in a comment that knowing my family, they would probably rent a private jet and fly her here. That was a joke commenting on what they would want to do, not what they would do. No, I'm not wealthy either. In the post I wrote, I can probably afford it but I don't really want to. And I meant that I'd hate to suddenly have something like 10% of my savings left overnight, just guessing here, no idea what the actual sum would have been. I'm sure anyone here would consider that factor. Anyway, someone said the limit is 3 years back. I didn't know that. I can be an asshole sometimes, but I'm not some monster. The money question was a question, not the question. Yes, I have had my number for a long time. Never had a reason to change it. We had our first video call today, and it was a long conversation. I had a list of things to bring up, mostly from suggestions here, so I'm ever thankful for that. Most of it was quite personal for both of us, so I won't write it here. But it boils down to that we both want to continue to stay in touch and get to know each other. We also want to meet at some point, even if we don't know when yet. Her family knows of me and they will join a call in the future so I can speak to them as well. I will hold off on telling my family for a while, but I will probably tell them one at a time. Update. Hello all. A while back I made a post asking for advice. Back then I had just had it confirmed by DNA that I had a daughter I never knew about. I called her Jane in the other post, so I will be here too. Jane is the result of me hooking up with a woman while I was in the US working. It was really interesting to read about others' experiences in the comments and DMs. It's crazy what DNA tests have done in recent times. Some wrote that Jane is probably just a kid looking for her roots, and you were absolutely right. I've been getting a steady stream of DMs since my last post. Most have been nice, just asking for an update. Then there were the absolute nutcases who can't read and told me to drown myself. Hi to you too. Jane and I continued to talk after my last post. Mostly about her life, her mother, the family trees, etc. I never thought I would connect with her like I did. She's a very intelligent and mature young woman. My family knows now, and it went better than expected. Mom and sister still went a bit apeshit, but Dad knocked them out with a large club he always carries with him. To the nutcases, no, that last bit didn't actually happen. Funny thing, my brother-in-law actually distracted Mom by reminding her that she has made sweaters for all the other grandkids, but now she's way behind on one. All of them understandably wanted to call her, but my daughter, yes, it's pretty cool to be able to say that. And I had already planned to have that call the following day. And it went really well. We made introductions, explained everything that had happened, and that we planned for me to meet her by myself before anything. And guess what? We did meet. I flew over for a 10-day stay since I'm on leave and she's working during the summer. That way we could hang out in the evenings and weekends and I could go full tourist during the day. It was surreal from the start. I landed at the very same airport I left from almost 2 decades ago, and she was there to meet me together with her aunt. I can't describe with words what it was like to hug her for the first time. I'd seen her many times in video calls, but she was just so beautiful I started crying. I met so many people in the first couple of days I can't remember the names of half of them. I gave her the sweater from my mother, a hand-drawn family tree from my niece, and a gift I made myself, but I won't tell what that one was. While I, still, don't agree with the Georgia weather, I had a blast during the days just walking around town. I went to Jane's workplace almost every day and pretended to be a regular customer. We had lunch and dinners either alone, or with the rest of her mother's side of the family. All of them were so nice and welcoming to me. I visited their house every day, but chose to stay at a hotel since I didn't want to be a bother or impose myself too hard on Jane's life. Obviously Jane and I talked a lot. About anything and everything, but mostly about her upbringing and her mother. I mentioned in the previous post that her mother wasn't able to care for Jane. I didn't press that subject much at first, but it was unavoidable after a while. I won't get into all the details, but her mother is sick and has lost some cognitive functions. She recognizes Jane and some family members well enough, others not so much. We went to visit the facility where she lives and Jane introduced me by name, and not as her father. She sadly didn't recognize me, so I stayed in the background for the remainder of our stay. Seeing a woman not much older than myself in such a state was a somber experience. So yeah, that was me rambling a bit about what happened after my last post. There was obviously a lot more, but most of it is deeply personal and emotional and I won't go through it here. I'm back home and we are keeping communications open. I'm definitely gonna fly Jane over here at some point when life allows it, but other than that, we have no specific plans for the future. After 10 years together, I'm ending my relationship with the woman I love because she wants kids and I don't. Am I the asshole? Original post, I, 31M, have known her, 29F, since we were teenagers? We got together 10 years ago, and have been living together for a bit over 7. It's been the perfect relationship in pretty much every way. We support each other through everything, we have fun together, she's my best friend and I'm hers. We're as intensely in love as we've ever been. We've discussed marriage a bunch through the years. As of a few years ago it wasn't either of us cup of tea, but more recently she has expressed an interest in tying the knot. I don't really have an interest in marriage as a concept, but as I was intent on spending my life with her either way, if she needed a ring and a wedding I was more than willing to accommodate her. As of around half a year ago, I was in the planning stages of a proposal, and had even started to look for a ring. I didn't spoil the eventual surprise, but based on our conversations on the matter I don't think it would have been very unexpected to her if I'd popped the question. If anything, she must be wondering what's taking so long, at this point. But our desires for the future have diverged in another way, that I can't just compromise over. She wants to be a mother, and I don't want to be a father. Much like marriage, for much of our relationship she didn't have such a desire, but now she does. Unlike marriage, however, parenting is not just a symbolic thing I can accommodate her on. She didn't pressure me to change my mind, but she has tried to gauge whether there was wiggle room on my end, whether I could see my opinion on the matter change. I can't. At this point, she has accepted that. I could pop into a jewelry store tomorrow, pick out a ring, propose to her at the next opportunity. She would say yes and a while later we'd be married, still on our way to spending our lives together. Even though she knows we will not have children together. She may still hold out hope I'll change my mind. I can't know for certain either way, of course. I'd get to be with her probably forever, which is really all I want. But, she wants to be a mother. Not only has she expressed it to me, it has been painfully obvious in the way she is around our friends and relatives' babies and children, or in the way she awkwardly brushes off her mother's comments about waiting for grandchildren. It really is plain to see. I couldn't miss it if I tried and, trust me, for a while I did. So I have to let her go. Or, since she has not exactly been trying to leave me, I guess a more accurate way to phrase it is that I have to push her away. I have considered the other options. There's the selfish option, which really just involves staying with her, never giving her a child. I wouldn't even have to coerce her into this or lie about my stance on the subject, but every parent I've asked has gushed about parenting being the most fulfilling experience they've gone through. And for some of them I saw firsthand the exact same tells that they wanted to start a family that I now see with my girlfriend. I can't be the person taking that away from her. There's also a part of me that just fears she'd resent and leave me later on. Then there's the option of committing to eventually become a father, for her. Maybe someday I'd even be thankful I did it. For me, after all, some of the parents I've polled also said they weren't always keen to have children. Some still had doubts even while expecting, and yet it still ended up being that wonderful, fulfilling experience they all described. But even as I type this, even as I try to convince myself I actually believe this, I just don't. And while I've asked for happy parents and healthy family units, there are also plenty of unhappy ones, or just shit ones, in this world. I think the least that every child deserves is to be wanted by both of their parents, and I can't see myself go through with this if there's even a chance that I won't meet even that very low bar. Even less so since I believe that chance to be quite high. I've pondered variations of those two main ones too. Waiting it out and hoping she changes her mind. Maybe being an aunt or a godmother, both are likely to happen within the next couple years, in the future can be enough, but they all seem like rolls of the dice, whose results will only be known years from now. When she expressed the desire to start a family, it was as a plan for a few years into the future. If that is to happen, without me, then I need to do this now. I've already procrastinated, simply pausing my plans for a proposal when I first realized how much she really wanted this, hoping a better answer would magically appear before me. But I can't just kick this can down the road forever. I've set the date, which is tomorrow. I will tell her I want to separate. I will tell her why as I have here. I have prepared myself in case she pushes back, tells me she doesn't want this, believes me to be lying about my reasons, pleads me to reconsider. I think my resolve is strong enough to hold no matter what she throws at me. I expect this to be a shock to her. As I said, she's likely to expect me to pop the question rather than to end things. I know I'm going to break her heart and I fucking hate myself for it. I'm also going to break mine, but I guess that's on me. I've already made plans for the aftermath. I know where I'll be staying for a short while after this, so I'll be out of her hair. I've laid out some options for longer-term living arrangements. I already know that everyone around us, my own family included, is gonna think I'm either an asshole or a complete moron. I doubt I'll get much in the way of empathy, but I also won't be looking for it. Can't plan for everything though. Figuring out how to live without her gonna be a bitch. Full transparency, I started writing this hoping I'd talk myself out of pulling that trigger. Hoping that typing it all out would reveal the magical answer I've been hoping for. But it hasn't. If anything, it has reinforced what I already knew. Edit. Some of you are pointing out that I'm taking a choice out of her hands when it should be her decision, or at least a joint one. I actually agree. But for months now I haven't been able to shake off the feeling that leaving that choice to her is in some ways cruel. Can you imagine leaving the one you love, shattering their heart, so you can then seek something they couldn't give you elsewhere? The only reason I can make that decision is because yes, I'll be hurting her, but in the hope that she gets something she wants, that I can't give her, out of it. If the roles were reversed, I could never leave her for my own benefit. I know it's still unfair for me to just take away her agency in this. I feel shit about it. I feel shit about a ton of things right now. I'll feel even worse tomorrow. But I don't know what else I can do that doesn't force an impossible choice on her. Edit 2. So this got a wide range of responses. Some of you agree. Some of you think I should be more nuanced in my approach. Some are being really weird and trying to shove sexism into this, or making up fan fiction that twists this into me just looking for an excuse to break up with her. Some also are saying I should just force myself to have children, which I feel are the most bonkers takes. Lots of you are also saying I need a vasectomy. And yes, that is something I plan to do. Among the criticisms saying I shouldn't just make that decision, a lot of you are saying I need to clarify to her how certain I am that I don't want children. I did mention that, maybe I didn't make it clear enough, but that has already happened. She has talked to me about it, about whether there was any chance I'd change my mind. I have been as clear as I could have been that there was not. And she has accepted it and made her choice to stay with me despite that. These are things that have already happened. But despite making that choice, it has been clear, painfully so, that she still does want children. That is why I'm taking the decision out of her hands. Maybe I'm as dumb or as big an asshole as some of you are saying. Maybe I'm gonna ruin both our lives for no good reason. But there is no point at this stage in restating my stance and pawning the choice off on her again. I think the choice she made will make her unhappy in the long term, and I think I have to do what I'm going to do. There's nothing else to it. P.S. Do not expect or await any further update. Edit 3. In my second and last edit to the original post, I told people not to expect an update. Frankly, I didn't think I'd want to write one, nor did I really think I'd have anything much to say. Things didn't exactly work out how I thought and said they would, so here I am. I did approach her last Saturday. I expressed what had been troubling me and explained to her why I thought we should go our separate ways. As I thought it would, it came as a shock to her. She told me that while she had been wanting to start a family with me, she thought she'd made it clear that she'd chosen me over that prospect, fully aware it would not happen. She emphasized that the with me part was essential to her, that she couldn't picture it any other way. I told her that I was aware of the choice she'd made, but that I did not want to be the reason she'd miss out on being a parent. That while I'm sure she didn't make that call lightly, that I can tell she still wishes to have children. She did confirm that wasn't a desire that had just disappeared, that it was still there, and that while that's true, I can only see her choice to stay with me leading to regret and resentment for her. I'm not gonna retell the whole discussion, those are the very rough broad strokes of both of our core positions, but it lasted hours, went through a range of arguments and emotions, cries on both sides, anger and distrust that I was being honest about my reasons on hers. I'd written in the original post that I thought I had the resolve to end things with her no matter what. As it turned out, maybe it came from a lack of resolve, or maybe she just got through to me and it would have just been stubbornness not to listen. But at the end of it, we agreed on just taking time apart from one another for the foreseeable future. On her part, she promised me she would truly take that time to think about all of it, to re-examine her feelings in depth. On mine, I committed to accepting her choice. The argument that convinced me was that this would be the first time in over a decade, the first time since we properly became adults, that we wouldn't be in each other's life, and that if the gain of perspective from being apart didn't change her mind, that had to mean something. Trying to see things rationally, I think the reasoning is sound. On a more emotional level, I cannot say I'm 100% certain I'm not just convincing myself of that, but overall I do think it's the way to go. The fact that, at this point, I don't know what she'll decide is one thing that makes me believe this was right. It also scares the shit out of me because, one of the two options is that I lose her. Might be dumb since I was ready to end it, but thinking about that prospect did and still does wreck me. Based on the responses I got last time, I'd wager many of you will think I was wrong to agree to this. Others advised exactly this, so maybe they'll be happy. Others, I'm sure, will still think I'm an asshole. Hopefully, this will turn out to be the right choice, whatever her decision ends up being. We have not set an exact time frame. I've asked that she take at least a few months, as that sounds like a good minimum, and more importantly that she takes as long as she needs. We, obviously, won't be living together anymore. I'm currently staying at a hotel, but, her decision, she will soon, a matter of days, move out of our apartment, at which point I'll move back in. From that point on, we will have no contact with one another at all, except for very strict exceptions which will hopefully not arise, emergencies, personal tragedies. And that's pretty much it. I miss her already. The next while is gonna suck. The aftermath may also suck, but then again this doesn't suck any worse than I was expecting the aftermath of the definitive breakup I thought would happen would suck. I don't want to promise an update that will tell you how it all ends. That is months away, and I don't know that I'll be in a sharing mood. And that's even if this ends with good news. Sorry for that. Hopefully I will though. Update 1. In my second and last edit to the original post, I told people not to expect an update. Frankly, I didn't think I'd want to write one, nor did I really think I'd have anything much to say. Things didn't exactly work out how I thought and said they would, so here I am. I did approach her last Saturday. I expressed what had been troubling me, and explained to her why I thought we should go our separate ways. As I thought it would, it came as a shock to her. She told me that while she had been wanting to start a family with me, she thought she'd made it clear that she'd chosen me over that prospect, fully aware it would not happen. She emphasized that the with me part was essential to her, that she couldn't picture it any other way. I told her that I was aware of the choice she'd made, but that I did not want to be the reason she'd miss out on being a parent. That while I'm sure she didn't make that call lightly, that I can tell she still wishes to have children, she did confirm that wasn't a desire that had just disappeared, that it was still there. And that while that's true, I can only see her choice to stay with me leading to regret and resentment for her. I'm not going to retell the whole discussion. Those are the very rough broad strokes of both of our core positions, but it lasted hours, went through a range of arguments and emotions, cries on both sides, anger and distrust that I was being honest about my reasons on hers. I'd written in the original post that I thought I had the resolve to end things with her no matter what. As it turned out, maybe it came from a lack of resolve, or maybe she just got through to me and it would have just been stubbornness not to listen. But at the end of it we agreed on just taking time apart from one another for the foreseeable future. On her part she promised me she would truly take that time to think about all of it. To re-examine her feelings in depth. On mine I committed to accepting her choice. The argument that convinced me was that this would be the first time in over a decade, the first time since we properly became adults, that we wouldn't be in each other's life, and that if the gain of perspective from being apart didn't change her mind, that had to mean something. Trying to see things rationally, I think the reasoning is sound. On a more emotional level, I cannot say I'm 100% certain I'm not just convincing myself of that, but overall I do think it's the way to go. The fact that, at this point, I don't know what she'll decide is one thing that makes me believe this was right. It also scares the shit out of me because, one of the two options is that I lose her. Might be dumb since I was ready to end it, but thinking about that prospect did and still does wreck me. Based on the responses I got last time, I'd wager many of you will think I was wrong to agree to this. Others advised exactly this, so maybe they'll be happy. Others, I'm sure, will still think I'm an asshole. Hopefully, this will turn out to be the right choice, whatever her decision ends up being. We have not set an exact time frame. I've asked that she take at least a few months, as that sounds like a good minimum, and more importantly that she takes as long as she needs. We, obviously, won't be living together anymore. I'm currently staying at a hotel, but, her decision, she will soon, a matter of days, move out of our apartment, at which point I'll move back in. From that point on, we will have no contact with one another at all, except for very strict exceptions which will hopefully not arise, emergencies, personal tragedies. And that's pretty much it. I miss her already. The next while is gonna suck. The aftermath may also suck. But then again this doesn't suck any worse than I was expecting the aftermath of the definitive breakup I thought would happen would suck. I don't want to promise an update that will tell you how it all ends. That is months away, and I don't know that I'll be in a sharing mood. And that's even if this ends with good news. Sorry for that. Hopefully I will though. Update 2. So, I'm not quite sure how many people remember and/or care about my original posts. They're still up on my profile if you need a refresher. But either way, here it comes. First off, I did break our no contact policy once. A couple of weeks in, I reached out to let her know about my intent to get a vasectomy, which happened a few weeks after that. It was a short conversation. She told me she did expect I might want to do that. We both confessed to missing the other, and that's pretty much it. I hadn't told her before our break because I'm skittish about medical procedures and was still reading up on and talking myself into it, and I didn't wait till after, because I felt that was information that could help her reflection, and also didn't like the idea of either delaying the procedure for an unknown amount of time or going through with it behind her back, if that makes sense. Now, on to the conclusion to all of this. I won't keep you in suspense any longer. My partner and I are back together and have been for some weeks. Aside from my transgression, we had no contact with one another for the duration of the outbreak, until she reached out to me saying she had made her decision and asking if we could meet later that day, at our place, technically just mine at that point, but you get it. Once she got there, she talked me through what she'd been doing during our time apart. She explained that at first she needed some time adjusting to life without me, not just in the sense of missing me as a person but also of not having a partner for the first time in a decade. Our experiences in that regard were rather similar. I guess we'd both grown to be somewhat codependent. Once she was past that, she started exploring her feelings on parenthood. One thing she did was talk about it with friends and relatives, both with parents, future parents as well as child-free couples, talking about their experience, about how they came to end up where they did. She also made a point to spend time with children, babysitting for friends semi-regularly and stuff like that. There was also a lot of pure introspection, thinking about her feelings as well as our relationship. She told me that while she does love being around children, she can confidently say that she doesn't need children of her own, and that she would rather be with the right person. Lucky for me, she still thinks I'm that person. While we both had to shed a bit of our codependency, the yearning and love for one another didn't go away or dim for either of us. Back to her thoughts on children and not having them, she said that she'd still have children in her life. Her brother and his wife are planning to start a family soon. My own sister, who is on good terms with my partner, already has one. And that would be enough to fulfill that part of her. She said she was sure and asked if I was going to be able to accept her decision. I said yes and thanked her for respecting my own decision not to have children and still wanting to be with me. We also talked about how worthwhile each of us felt this time apart had been. She said that while it ultimately didn't change her mind, it reinforced it, and she said that she could understand why I needed that added certainty. She did add that she wished I'd been more open to her about this whole thing before I'd essentially convinced myself to end things with her, that she felt communication had before been a strong point of our relationship and that it did hurt to be blindsided. I committed to doing better in the future should any such circumstances arise. And that's kind of it. We've fallen back into our relationship dynamic pretty seamlessly. She's back living with me in our apartment. We've been making up for lost time, catching up on what the other had been up to, and made a point to have what I'd call an above-average amount of romantic evenings and such since we got back together. Really though, the romance is nice, just being with her again has been bliss. Her 30th birthday is coming up over the summer and we've made plans for a 2-week getaway somewhere sunny to celebrate, just the two of us. We will also have a thing with friends and family once we're back, but we'll be away for the day proper. Not our first time vacationing together of course, but kinda pulling out all the stops on this one. I'm also considering maybe popping the question then, but I first want to sound out that it is still what she wants. Hopefully I don't completely ruin the surprise trying to figure that out. I'd like to thank those who left comments or reached out in DMs, whether they were messages of support, advice or criticism. I was not in the ideal mindset to accept feedback after my initial submission, but I did find worth in a lot of what I dismissed at the time, rereading those threads, the ones I made but also on another sub they were reposted to, during the past months. This will hopefully be the last update, but I'll try to answer a few comments. Am I the asshole for accidentally revealing my brother's vasectomy when his girlfriend talked about their plans to have kids? My brother, Mark 40, won the lottery when he was 20. It was $1,000 a week for life. He was young and wanted to travel. He dropped out of school and has spent his entire adulthood basically seeing the world. He comes home to visit every few years and we FaceTime with him when he is near a signal. He doesn't travel first class or stay in expensive resorts, so he has actually built up some nice savings. He came home with a girlfriend, Haley, 28, this year. They met when they got stuck in South America during the pandemic. She has been traveling since she graduated from university and she works out of a laptop. I, F54, live in the same city where I was born. I love it here. I love being close to my parents and my grandchildren. And most of my siblings. Mark hated being the youngest of 8 and always swore he would not have kids. Our parents were older when they had him and they didn't have the energy for him, truth be told. Mark came home when he was 30 and told us all that he had had a vasectomy and that he would not be contributing to the world population. Haley is a pretty young thing and she is also intelligent and sweet. I can understand why anyone would fall in love with her. We were having a family BBQ to celebrate Mark being in town. There were maybe 30 people in my parents' yard and house. I was talking to Haley about her future plans now that the world opened up again. She said that she was ready to settle down and start a family. I asked if they were planning on adopting from one of the countries that they had traveled to or if they would try in North America. She said they had talked about it and would be having at least one child of their own. This may be where I fucked up. I asked where Mark got his vasectomy reversed or if they were having in vitro fertilization. I know they can harvest sperm from a testicle even after a vasectomy. She went very quiet and went over to Mark. They spoke and they left. Mark called me later that night to scream at me for ruining his life. He hadn't told her and he was planning on just continuing to travel and maybe adopt if they decided on it. He said I shared private medical information and that he never wanted to see me again. I apologized over and over. I seriously had no way of knowing that he was planning a future with this girl without telling her a pretty big piece of the puzzle might be missing. I feel bad for him, but I think he should have told her. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Your brother is a self-centered jerk. He was just going to lie and string that poor girl along. Thank you so much for telling her the truth even if it was an accident. God, what an $1 your brother is. Shame on him. Please tell everyone he dates that he has had a vasectomy. OP. He's usually not in the country. OP on how old the girlfriend was when her brother met her. OP. I think she was 25 when they met. Comment 2. I mean, did you slip up or did you know you were kicking a wasp's nest? OP. They have been together for almost 3 years and are planning one biological kid. I assumed it must have come up. Comment 3. So they talked about it and he didn't bring it up on his own terms at all? Wouldn't that have been the time for him to tell his partner about the vasectomy? Update. My brother now refuses to visit our parents if I'm around because I accidentally told his girlfriend at the time that he had a vasectomy when she told me that they were trying for kids. So it wasn't that he was planning on reversing his vasectomy or anything, he wanted to do the same as that poor woman's boyfriend. Just lead her on until it was too late for her to have kids. He came by this summer with his girlfriend and I stayed away. I guess he told this one that he and I have a bad relationship and that I'm jealous of his riches, LOL, after his lottery win. I'm not going to do anything about it, but I hope she finds out before he screws her future as well. Sort of a funny thing though. His lottery money may run out soon. It turns out that he should have paid more attention. The money he won was $1,000 a week for life and was actually only for 25 years. He does have savings, so he shouldn't be destitute or anything, but he also does not have a pension or anything. I am interested to see what happens in 4 years. Comments. Comment 1. You might have spilled the beans, but it looks like his secret was bound to come out sooner or later anyway. It's cool that you're not trying to get involved, but hoping his girlfriend finds out shows you still care about her. Comment 2. Where are your parents on this? If I knew my sons were this manipulative and deceitful, I'd be disgusted. I'd also be telling every single woman he brings home, which means they'd vanish, I'm sure. My mother moved away with her fiancé, and left me feeling abandoned. She was a terrible mother. I tried posting this elsewhere, but I think it got caught in a spam filter and the mods haven't responded. I don't know if this is the right place to go either since I'm 16F. Like, I mostly live with my dad, but I spend a weekend every month with mom. They divorced 3 years ago. Mom moved in with my cousin and it was cool cause I went there all the time. Like a year and a half ago, mom made me go there, introduced me to this girl and came out to me and said they were dating. She and her fiancé are engaged now. She also said they were moving to Victoria in a week. So yeah, after a week she was gone. From where I am to her it's a drive, a ferry ride and then another drive. It takes a while to see her, that's why I can only go once a month. Since she left, everything's been so sucky between us. Now it's like a good morning message and FT good night for 5 minutes. And everything else that changed with her just dipping like that sucks too. I don't even like visiting her, cause it's like I don't belong with her and her fiancé, but I went cause I thought that she wanted to see me and I miss her a lot every day. This weekend I was in Victoria and she was FT my cousin while I studied and they got to wedding talk. She said stuff like how her life is 100x better since she left, how she's finally got real happiness in her fiancé. Her fiancé is her world now and can't wait to fully move on from her old life. It just made me so freaking angry, like her life is so much better with me barely in it. And move on from that old life? I'm from that old life. I guess she noticed I was pissed cause at night she tried to talk to me. I said I didn't want to talk, but she's like she deserves to know when something's wrong with her girl since I always seem so depressed whenever I come over, and that just made me snap and I lost it and started shouting at her. I was like, I fucking hate the way she came out cause my life got a lot worse and it ruined things between us, and it sucks that it's like she wants me gone cause she's happier without me. That started a pretty bad argument cause she was like I'm blowing it out of proportion. I just don't understand. And then mom just left the room, but I heard her crying when I walked by her room to go to the washroom at night. In the morning her fiancé drove me to the ferry right after breakfast instead of after dinner. Since then it was just text cause I didn't want to talk to her. My dad and his GF have noticed my attitude, so yesterday I told them what happened and he flipped, telling me I couldn't say that shit to my mom, and his GF said I was an asshole for saying it. Before I went to sleep I FT'd mom to talk again, and she said my happiness is hers, and if she's why I'm depressed I shouldn't see her till I'm ready. Now I don't know like if I was wrong to say that shit to mom or what I should do even. My fucking counselor is still in Barbados. My dad's at work and his GF's like she's staying out of it, and my cousin did too. Again, sorry if this is the wrong subreddit. If there's a better one for me to post since the other one I tried doesn't seem to be it either. Please let me know. Update. So a lot of shit has happened since my last post and I just feel more shit than before. I didn't plan on posting here again, but you all were so nice I thought it couldn't hurt to hear what you have to say. But I called my uncle, he wanted to see me. Cause I was scared my dad told him, and then he's ashamed of me too cause he's gay and he's my fave uncle ever. So he picked me up after school and I went to his apartment and he just gave me a big hug because he knew something was up. So I told him what I said and why I said it, and that I was scared he'd be mad at me too if my dad was the one who told him. He just told me he isn't mad and he understands, and we played basketball at the court nearby until it was time for him to drop me off. That was like the last time I've even felt actually happy cause the entire rest of this month has been such absolute shit. Like I phoned my mom to say sorry the day after and talk about how I feel, but all she did was get mad at me for telling my uncle and said I'm not allowed to share stuff about her home without her permission. I said I was sorry about both things, but she said it didn't matter now and just hung up. Then her fiancé texted and just said to give my mom a few days to calm down. That just made me mad cause why should I? She's my mom. I should be able to phone her whenever, and I tried but she just declined my call, and then I think I turned off her phone. I don't know, I haven't slept properly at all since then cause I think I ruined things with my mom for good. Like all she's been doing is texting me and we've barely actually talked. Like I keep thinking about it and my thoughts and dreams just get all messed up, and it's like I get this soft lump in my stomach that keeps coming and going the more I think about it. It feels like I was right about me being part of her old life, and I wish I'd never said what I did to her. Then it turns out I was supposed to get a tetanus shot when I was 11, but I didn't for some reason. We're not anti-vaxxers. So I had to get it now cause Dad said Vancouver Coastal Health Authority was on his ass, and I ended up having a terrible allergic reaction to it. Like I got sent to the hospital for a week cause of it, like apparently super rare reaction, hooray for me. And that fucked up my exams too, and my mom didn't even come see me cause she was going to a cabin with her fiancé the day after. She talked to my dad on the phone and learned how bad it was, but just texted me she knew I'd be better and that if I was still there when she came back she'd come right away. Like it made me want to stay in the hospital for longer. She didn't fucking come, everyone came but her, like my cousin came every day, and my dad's GF even slept by me a few days, and my nieces and even my boyfriends and best friends' moms came but mine didn't. And when I got out all I got was a text saying so happy you're out of the hospital baby, with a selfie from her and her partner showing off the cabin included with it. Like I couldn't stop looking at that stupid photo, I like obsessed over it for days and kept getting that stupid feeling in my stomach, and so I smashed my phone and my dad's GF heard and he got an emergency meeting with my counselor. She's a psychologist but I've always called her that. Set up. And I told her everything but more details obvi, and at the end of it she said I'm very likely depressed and might need treatment. I don't know. I got scared and asked her to tell my dad, and she did, and told us to get our family doctor to give a referral to a psychiatrist to get proper diagnosis for treatment, or to just get it from the family doctor. My dad got scared and made us get that referral the next day. My dad made the appointment and asked my mom to come, but she said she won't be able to and just texted me to stay strong and remember I'm the most important thing in the world to her. I don't know what to do. I don't want meds or anything. I just want my mom to love me like she used to again. If you guys have any advice on what to do, I need to hear it, cause it's like my mom isn't even listening to me anymore, and the appointment is on Friday and I'm feeling scared. Second update. So, I would have made an update earlier but I just didn't have time. I'm in the hospital right now recovering from my ankle surgery, and all I have is time until I can go home on Friday, so I thought I might as well update. The day after I wrote my post I had my niece's mom, my cousin-in-law but she introduces me as her little sister, so sister-in-law, drive me to my uncle, and he just gave me the biggest hug ever, and I don't know, I just ended up crying a little and they ended up calming me down. I told my uncle about the appointment with the psychiatrist and that I was scared even though everybody, you guys, was saying it would be okay and that I'd just been so unhappy and that I'd just missed my mom so much. He agreed to go with me and my dad to the psychiatrist cause my mom wouldn't be coming. I don't know, I just didn't sleep at all that night and just felt so scared in the morning and kept thinking about mom and didn't want to go to school either, but I did go, just felt so weird, like that feeling in my stomach was just there and not going away. Only hanging out with my boyfriend felt right, and before lunchtime I just fell asleep in class and got sent to the office. They phoned my dad and he signed me out and dropped me off at my uncle's house. He was already taking care of my niece, so I felt bad, but I went to sleep at the same time as her and he took a really cute photo of us sleeping next to each other. He woke me up when my dad came back and we just went to the psychiatrist together. Long story short, at the end of the appointment the psychiatrist prescribed me a really low dose of antidepressants cause I'm still scared. I've been taking them and they have made me feel a bit better, but I have another appointment next week cause my counselor says I might need a higher dose. When I vented to my counselor, she said she'd be willing to host an extra joint session between me and my mom on Zoom if she agreed, and that it might help if I get my feelings across with a third party. I didn't want to do it, but some of you recommended it and my counselor said it could be a good first step. So I called my mom and it was a short conversation again, but she agreed to the counseling session and all I had to do was send her the Zoom link, so we set one up for later. So I had the Zoom session in our computer room so I'd be all alone there, and at first my mom seemed so excited because she was like, we can work through our issues and put them behind us. I don't want to talk about all of it. I mean, I couldn't anyway. I can't remember most of it, but it didn't go well at all. Like when my counselor brought up not being with her that much, my mom said when I came to University of Victoria, I'd obviously stay with her, and I just said after everything I didn't even want to go to the University of Victoria anymore and would rather just go to University of British Columbia cause everybody here actually wants me. My mom said that was ridiculous since outside of Waterloo, University of Victoria was the best option for software engineering in Canada and University of British Columbia only has electrical computer engineering, so I'd have to go to her if I still wanted to do that. I remember my mom said a few times like she'd spent over a decade doing nothing but being a mom, and now that she finally understood herself she just wanted time to explore that, and I should appreciate that. Then at the end of it I told my mom that I hated that she didn't come and see me in the hospital and that she didn't even phone me like I told her I was scared I'd die, and she just said it wasn't that serious cause it was a vaccine and those protect us, and to not act like it was serious. I don't know, that made me mad and I just muted my mic cause I didn't want them to hear me crying, but I kinda had a breakdown and just ran out to my dad and his fiancée cause I was crying. They said they ended the session, but I don't know what they said to my mom or the counselor. Apparently I fell asleep crying on the couch while hugging my dad, but I don't remember any of it, but my dad said I was crying really loudly. I think they carried me to their bed because when I woke up in the morning I was there and my dad was on a mattress by the door and she was on one by the washroom door. They said it was to block me cause they were scared I'd try something. My dad took my new phone and laptop from me for a bit and said it might be healthy for me to stay off them for a bit. I have them back now. I haven't talked to my mom at all since then. I mean, not even good morning, good night texts. She hasn't contacted me at all about my broken ankle even though I had surgery yesterday, and I feel like she doesn't even care that I got hurt. Like, I know dad told her that I'm going to surgery but she hasn't called. I have my phone and laptop back now, but my dad made me delete IG and Snap because he's worried seeing her on there might trigger me. A lot of you said I should stop talking to her, but I feel bad about it. Like when I think about it makes me feel worse, like it's over now and I don't have her anymore. I just want her back. The only time I learn what's up with her is if I go to my cousin, who my mom stayed with after the divorce, and ask, and apparently she's still happy and is occupied with all her wedding planning. Like, another thing that sucks is that I used to love watching Scream with my cousin, but now I can't even watch it cause I feel bad for Billy cause his mom left him too, and I feel bad for feeling like that cause he's the villain. So I couldn't even get through our rewatch and we couldn't even watch the new one. I told my counselor that I still feel really bad and sad and nothing's changed, and she said I need to bring it up at my next appointment with the psychiatrist so he can up my dose. I don't know, I feel confused and I don't like not seeing or talking to my mom at all. I feel like I've done the wrong thing. I've tried to do things we used to do with my dad's fiancée and my boyfriend's mom, but it's not the same and I just miss her more even though she probably doesn't miss me at all. I wish I could see her, but I don't want to keep ruining things for myself cause what if she doesn't want me anymore? I'd rant to my counselor about it, but I'm stuck in the hospital bed till Friday. So I guess that's why I'm back here looking for advice on what to do when I'm out of here. Third update. Hey guys, I'm posting again cause I'm confused as to what's going on and I thought maybe I'd get some opinions here before I bring it up with my therapist. Pretty much, I don't know if my mom hates me still or if now she wants to be my mom again. Because everything that she's done lately has made it so confusing. So my foot is still bad, The doctor said it's healing, but I'm mostly confined to crutches or to a wheelchair, and so I'm not really able to go to a lot of places. I mean, I can go anywhere, but I don't go cause it just takes too long to get around. I'm guessing that my cousin told my mom because apparently she came to New Westminster and did her wedding dress shopping there with my cousin and her fiancé, and she didn't even tell me. I know we hadn't talked since the therapy session, but she promised me that I would get to do that with her, and she didn't even tell me. I found out because when I visited my cousin, she showed me the dresses she was going to wear at the wedding and at the reception, and the ones my mom and her got for me to wear at those. I was confused because I was sad she didn't take me, but happy cause that meant she still wanted me there. Anyway, her wedding was on Canada Day and I went with my cousin to Victoria a week earlier. My dad did say I didn't need to go, but I didn't want to miss it. We stayed at an Airbnb that my mom got for some of our relatives cause her place was too small. She didn't come to visit me there, but my cousin went to meet her and I didn't go cause my foot was hurting really bad. When she came back, she said my mom was really disappointed I didn't come as well. The day after, I was going to go shopping downtown with my cousin, but then my mom came. Like, when she saw me, she didn't give me a hug like she usually gives. She just kinda held my shoulders and gave an awkward kiss on the cheek and said she's glad that I decided to come. Then she kind of turned me over to my aunt, my mom's cousin, to go shopping with instead, cause she and my cousin would be busy that week with all the wedding stuff and making sure it all went perfectly so we couldn't go downtown. I love my aunt, so it wasn't bad going downtown with her. She didn't even mind pushing me in the wheelchair. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. 2 days before the wedding, they had this really big family dinner where my mom and her wife were introducing people to their relatives. Because my foot got swollen and the boot was hurting it, I had to go in the wheelchair. So my mom didn't even introduce me to people, and one of the few times I was able to talk to her, this guy related to her wife interrupted us, asked who I was, and she just said don't worry about her, and then had an aunt of mine wheel me away. That made me really upset, but I did feel a bit better because her fiancé's parents brought gifts for me. Not my kind of stuff. I think they thought I was younger than I am. The wedding itself was cool. My foot wasn't badly swollen then, so I was able to use my crutches. My mom acts so differently then and made me take a bunch of pictures with her and with her fiancé, and she seemed so happy and told me that it was the best day of her life only because I came. At the reception, I wore the dress that she got me, but I couldn't walk in the crutches while wearing it. Not like the wedding one. So my aunt made me go in that dress and in my wheelchair even though I didn't want to. And my cousin said I could wear a different dress, but my aunt was like, my mom got the dress specially for me and will be upset if I don't wear it. Then at the reception, I wasn't seated at the table with family near the stage where she and her fiancé sat, but at a table with kids I didn't even know, even though some of my relatives younger than me were at the family table. My aunt said they moved me there because of my wheelchair, but I just don't get why I couldn't be with my family. My mom didn't even take a photo with me at the reception. She just came to me once and said hi, and I wasn't even in the family photo cause we didn't bring my crutches cause of my wheelchair, so my aunt said my mom told them to leave me cause they couldn't fit me in. Then the day after we were going home, my mom came to say goodbye to us. She talked to me alone for a minute and then she said sorry for everything that happened between us before and that she was hoping we could get past it, but if we couldn't, she was still happy. I came to her wedding. I didn't really get to say anything cause she just hugged me and sent us on our way. I don't feel that sad about everything anymore though, cause I think that the antidepressants have been helping. I have been feeling happier for about a month now and nothing has happened to me like I was afraid. For the last 2 weeks, my mom has been texting good morning and good night again when I didn't do anything, like text, call or phone or FaceTime since the therapy session with her. It hasn't been more than that, but I've been saying it back. I'm just confused with the way she's acting and what she wants. Do you guys have any clue or advice? Edit. I wish I could say thank you to everybody who has commented and given advice. I'm sorry if I didn't respond to you personally, but it means so much to me that you guys cared. I've read everything and I will be bringing up a lot of this with my counselor. Thank you guys so much. I love you all. 4th update. So I got a phone call from my mom and I did answer, cause I guess I was curious, cause she's only been texting me since her wedding and she said she wanted me to come over, and even though I was really missing her, because I was going to go with my uncle's family to Seattle that weekend, I said no. I think I would have said no anyway because I was just planning on staying away like everybody here suggested, and my counselor also said that it might be good to define my life without her. She said okay, but then the day after, I think she phoned my dad because he said that I had to go to Victoria instead. I told him I didn't want to go, but we ended up arguing and he said that I didn't have a choice and my uncle would take me somewhere when I got back. So my dad dropped me and my cousin off at the ferry, and when we got to Victoria, it turns out my mom and her wife, I guess stepmom now, moved into their new house. My mom's wife wasn't there cause she was in Ottawa for work, but her parents did come. They're really nice. They kind of went on about how they thought they'd never have grandkids and were so happy when they learned my mom had me. They did offer to get me some presents this time, but my mom let them take me to dinner at some pierogi place downtown instead. I don't know what to think about the visit because so much of it was good, but the one bad part was really bad. When I got there, I wanted to talk to her about the stuff at her wedding and everything else, and I wanted to tell her that I would rather have gone with my uncle, but then I just felt really nervous and just couldn't because I don't know, I kind of felt like I'd just ruin the entire trip if I did. So I just didn't, and maybe that was the wrong thing. The first thing I noticed in her house was her giant graduation picture where she's holding a baby me above the fireplace. Then my mom surprised me by showing me my room, and it's perfect. I have a huge bed, a big personal washroom, a walk-in closet, one of those fancy standing desks, and a TV. It's all white cause my mom was like, when my foot is better she wants me to come and paint and decorate it all with her. She even promised she'd never let anybody use the room even if I'm not there that often. The first night after I got back from the pierogi place, my mom, my cousin and I stayed up so late just watching TV, and I even fell asleep hugging her. The next day we went downtown and my mom took us shopping and then to the Royal British Columbia Museum, the one with the mammoths. My foot and my hands really started hurting after my mom made me use my crutches and not wheelchair because she said it'd be good exercise, so then she took us to a spa. We took so many pictures and I'm pretty sure she put them on Instagram, but I'm not allowed on it anymore, so I'm not sure. I was really tired when we got back, so I conked out right away, and when I woke up in the morning, Mom actually brought me pancakes in bed because of my foot, cause I love it when she makes those. The rest of that day was good too, except at night my mom said that when I moved in for university, we could make every day like this, so I reminded her that I might go to University of British Columbia instead. We got into a really big argument about university and I did scream at her and bring up stuff from before, but pretty much my mom said that she wants me to go to University of Victoria. If I still want to do software engineering, and said that if it was any other kind of engineering I wanted to do she wouldn't mind paying for the University of British Columbia, but that it's not good for software. She did say she would still pay no matter where I went, but she'd be really disappointed if I chose not to go to the best university for my degree where I could stay with her, just cause I blamed her coming out and moving for everything bad that's happened to me since then. She also said I needed to stop exaggerating how bad everything has been because it shouldn't make me change my university plan. I tried telling her that's not what I meant, but I couldn't say it right, and I fucking started crying and she seemed to get really mad. She didn't yell or anything, but she just gave a frustrated sigh and said I needed to stop crying, grow up, and accept that she handled things the best way she could and my attitude problems were why it's been a bad year for us. That just made me cry more, and she said if I don't grow up I'm never going to get a husband, and then left the room. I just kind of kept crying cause I don't feel like any of that is true, and the husband part was so fucking weird and I honestly can't stop thinking about that part specifically. Half an hour later, she came back with water and made me drink and started telling me how if I want to do computer or electrical or any other engineering she'd support the University of British Columbia but not the University of Victoria. Is the best for software outside of Waterloo, and she doesn't want to send me so far away but will still pay for it if that's what I choose. I don't know why she wanted to keep talking about that, but I didn't, so I just agreed when she said she'll take me to talk to an advisor to convince me next time I come over. Me and my cousin left early the next morning, so yesterday, and my mom said she'd try and come over for my birthday because her in-laws really wanted to attend and that she'd try and make an appointment at the University of Victoria. Once my foot's better. The thing is that argument was the one bad thing about that visit. Everything else would have been perfect because it was just like it used to be with her, and I don't even know if I'd be posting if it had been, but I just can't stop thinking about the stuff that she said when we argued. I don't even know why she said the husband thing. I just don't get what the fuck she meant by that, or why she would bring it up. I'm not going to smash my phone this time, but I do feel mad thinking about it. I told my cousin about the argument we had on the way back, and she told me she personally thinks I should go to University of British Columbia and would try to convince my mom, but that she thinks she just wants me to live with her again. I told my dad and his fiancée about it and he apologized for making me go but said that he had to. He and his fiancée have checked on me a dozen times already. Like, I'm get that stupid fucking feeling in my stomach again every time I think about it, and I wish I'd been able to go with my uncle instead. But I am going to spend the rest of the week at his apartment, so I guess it's fine. I'm going to go to my counselor again today before my uncle picks me up. Does anybody have any advice for me that I can bring up? Cause we went through comments posted here last time. Fifth update. So some stuff has happened. I've pretty much just been texting with my mom since my visit to her. I tried to keep it good night, good morning, but when I didn't respond to her other messages, she phoned my dad and he told me I didn't have to phone her but to at least respond to her other messages. I did have to go to Victoria for Thanksgiving because her wife's whole family was going to be there and she told my dad I had to go. I was only there for 3 days with my cousin, and the first 2 days, my mom pretty much spent with me and it was like it used to be again. Like she and I went shopping, We even cuddled to sleep watching TV again, but the third day she and her wife were focused on the dinner and guests and everything, so I get it. Yeah, I was upset that she paid really little attention to me, but her wife's entire immediate family was there and I get that she needed to focus on them. But when we left after dinner, we had to take the really late ferry. My mom said bye and that she was going to book a meeting at the University of Victoria to take me to, and didn't even give me a second to talk about it before waving us bye. And then it went back to just texting good morning, good night until my birthday. So then my mom and her wife came with her wife's parents because my mom was like they really wanted to celebrate my birthday. I guess they're my step-grandparents, but I really like them and they seem to really like me too. I mean, my step-grandma said the best thing about the wedding was that they finally got a grandchild and they brought a lot of presents for me. They have a niece around my age and they had her go out with them and just get so much stuff that they think someone my age will like, and I do like it. My mom got me an album of pictures of us and said to look at the photos whenever I miss her cause it'll make it like she's right there with me. At the party, mom and dad seemed to get along just like when they were married. Like they were laughing, telling jokes, and even had me do goofy pictures with them like we all used to. Mom's wife got along with dad's fiancé and with my uncle, his son and his son's wife. My mom didn't talk to my uncle at all beyond when he came to say hi to her, and she said hi in a really mean tone to him, which was weird since they used to be so close. I guess she's still mad at him for when I talked to him about what was going on. She was really weird with my boyfriend and was nonstop making jokes about him and me getting married and making her a grandma. She straight up said to him, "I don't want you to wait until I'm gray and in my 40s to make me a grandma." But his mom also got in the jokes, so I guess it was just a mom thing. My mom and her wife left after only about an hour and a half in order to go stay at a fancy hotel all the way over by Cole Harbor, even though my dad did offer them a room. Mom just said she doesn't feel it'd be appropriate to stay in the same house as him and it's too painful for her, cause she designed the house when I asked her why she couldn't stay. It did piss me off cause they came at 4 o'clock, and so when everyone was setting up I guess that means they missed the actual party. My step-grandparents stayed though and only left in the morning when my mom and her wife came to pick them up. Then at like 8:30, my mom FaceTimed me, but it looked like she and her wife were in the hotel spa or something. It doesn't make sense cause I thought those closed pretty early in the day, but they were wearing those robes and looked like they were someplace really fancy. Then my mom was like she has to hang up cause she doesn't want me to see them without clothes on, and they were both giggling at that. That really fucking pissed me off that they ditched my birthday to go hang out in a spa. Maybe they were actually doing something else, but I honestly don't want to even think about that beyond what I have. Then there was the album that she gave me as a present. I didn't really think about that a lot then because I was just happy that she came, but I did try yesterday because my dad's fiancé was meeting with some of her relatives for last-minute planning because her and dad's wedding is on Sunday. I wasn't with them because I was studying, but when I did leave my room to get my charger I heard them talking about me. My dad's fiancé was saying the best stuff about me, but her relatives were saying some shitty things about my mom and she wasn't stopping them. She was also talking about how my mom is forcing my dad's hand to send me to her over winter break instead of my uncle's cause that's when their honeymoon is. I didn't mean a spy, and I get now that I'm writing about it that what they were saying wasn't exactly wrong and they were only saying it because they didn't think I'd hear, but it really fucking pissed me off and it still does. So because I was upset I looked at the album and it's pictures of both of us from when I was a baby until now. Behind each picture she slid a note about why that memory is special or what the picture means to her if she can't remember. But it just made me angry because of how few photos there are from after she moved to Victoria. Most of them are the ones of the wedding day and barely anything before that. There's one photo in it that was like a month before she came out, and it's when she lived at my cousin's house, and pretty much I surprised her with cookies that my cousin and I made that day. When I surprised her, she hugged me so tight and told me she was so proud of me, and my cousin took the photo on her phone. But that night I found her crying in her room and she said it's because I'm growing up, and said something like how she wishes she could live in moments like that forever since she's so proud of me. And it just makes me so mad because that's what I want back, and the fact that I'm not even in photos of her pre-wedding events and reception and so much other stuff in Victoria just makes it seem as if the album is her giving me proof that I've barely been in her life and that I should be happy for it. And I know I shouldn't be thinking that because she actually gave me such a good gift and I'm poisoning it in my own mind instead of valuing it and all the memories inside. My therapist has been trying to help me define life without her, and it's hard cause I don't want to, because I can't let go of this feeling that it could be good again and I don't want those people to be right. My therapist says it's all right to want that, but for my own sake I need to in case it doesn't ever happen, and it'll help once I'm in university, so I've been trying but I hate it. So, I guess I came here again to ask for advice and stuff I can bring up in therapy. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I also thought that perhaps the grandparents-in-law saw how little OP was being acknowledged and wanted to change that. If they were really crazy about having a grandchild, they would probably want a genetic one. I think they might possibly be decent people trying to help that poor neglected kid. Op's mother is a cruel, disgusting human being. Comment 2. I get that feeling too. Mom was completely okay with leaving her old life, her daughter, behind, until wannabe granny grandpa started wanting to be involved. Now daughter has value. It's so infuriating that all these adults, minus the uncle, keep blaming shifting onto her, like why does this kid have to make all the goddamn adjustments in behavior and attitude? Of course she is depressed that her mom threw her away. But this kid keeps acknowledging, and she could be handling things better instead of making them worse. She isn't. It is normal to be mad at mom for treating her like an unwanted wedding crasher. She justified every shitty thing as something she, the kid, could have done better. No. She could have had a teenage meltdown when mom ditched her for the wedding dress shopping or when she didn't even introduce her at the wedding. Being put at the kids' table, fucking police. Comment 3. The husband comment makes way more sense now if she wants her to have kids. That's totally why she said that. She wants her daughter to have kids so the in-laws have grandkids. That's totally it. Why would a lesbian make a comment like that to their daughter? It seems so weird and not something a gay person would say. But if she wants her daughter to have kids, of course she wants her to have a husband. She probably wants to speed that process along. What a fucking awful thing to say to your 16-year-old daughter while she's crying. Instead of being empathetic and understanding, she dismisses her feelings, insults her, then tells her she won't ever get a husband. I hope this girl realizes she doesn't need her mom. She's not at fault, and she gets better with her depression. Am I the asshole for getting rid of the foster child my family has had for 7 years, and I don't care if it makes me a bad person? Firstly, please reserve judgment until the end. If you still think I'm a bad person after reading this, I won't stop you. I'm a 30-year-old man. My mom was a foster carer for the last 11 years before she passed away, and she made me promise that I would take over when she died. She had heart failure, but had lived for 7 years after diagnosis. She had 2 foster children, John and Paul. John came to live with us when I was 19 years old and he was 8 and had severe behavioral issues linked to his trauma. My world was turned upside down. But I very quickly grew to love him. Underneath the trauma and the difficulties, he was an amazing boy who I loved with my entire heart. He's now 19 himself and still lives with me. He just finished high school and I have no plans to move him out until he is ready. John and I have a great relationship. On the other hand, Paul is 16 years old. He came to live with us when he was 9. Paul has severe special needs, and no matter how much I've tried, I just cannot connect with him in the same way I did for John. Whereas John's behavior never bothered me, with Paul they do. I find him frustrating and I have to remind myself that he is only on the same level as a 3/4-year-old mentally, and it's not fair that I get frustrated at him. When Mum was still alive, she took the main role of looking after Paul, and I supported her. Which was okay, but I knew that when she was gone I would struggle with him by myself. I didn't sign up to do this. I didn't sign up to look after him for the rest of my life, I just didn't. Mum died 6 months ago, and I said to myself I would try. I kept Paul for all this time, but I just can't cope with him. I can't. I told my social worker that he needs to be moved by the end of the month because I just can't manage. I want to continue fostering, and I love being a foster carer. But I just cannot meet his needs, and it was different when Mum was still alive. I feel so guilty because I made my mum a promise that I would care for him until he was at least 18. But I'm building resentment towards him and it isn't fair on him. He deserves to have someone who loves and cares for him in the ways that I just can't. So yeah, call me selfish, call me scum. Whatever, I deserve it. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Have you looked into state programs that could help with having a nurse or special needs caregiver to help with the burden? Uprooting Paul could hurt him even more, and he might be looking at you for support. Look into some programs to help and see what they say. If you need to move Paul, make sure you can discuss it with him. With him having a mind of a 3/4-year-old, that does some real damage to him if you aren't careful. My condolences and good luck. Edit. The other commenters are providing good advice and words of encouragement. OP. I've tried everything, any and all resources and support there is. When he's at school it's not too bad. He has a transport to and from school every day and has a career who comes and takes him out for 5 hours each week. Plus I have 2 days each month where he is sent to a different foster carer, so I can have some peace time. But even with the support I can't manage it. I feel guilty for giving up, but I honestly tried my best. This doesn't mean I'm cutting him off completely. I'll still visit him sometimes. But I can't meet his needs and I really tried. OP responds to multiple questions about Suck It In and continuing with fostering Paul, and if there are any programs or residential homes that work with people like Paul. OP, no. Don't worry, they already have a place for him in a residential home. I don't know if the system is different in different countries, but giving notice here on a placement isn't seen as the end of you fostering, and I didn't have to justify it beyond, I just can't cope, luckily. Because I would have broken down if I had had to find justifications for it. It's funny, my mum used to say that the agency would always have had a way harder time playing John than Paul. John has very mild learning disabilities, but mainly linked to trauma. And had very bad behavior, even now, linked to his trauma, even though it's way better than when he was 8. LOL. He's given me black eyes and bloody noses, smashed my laptops and TVs. And there was never a point, throughout all of that, where I ever thought I wouldn't give up on him. I would foster another child like him in a heartbeat and struggled to see why anyone wouldn't. To me, he was just a kid in a tough spot, and our love helped him. My mum explained to me that children like him are actually harder to place because people are less forgiving of behaviors without a cause they can physically see, like an obvious learning disability. I really tried to extend that to Paul, genuinely I did. I just couldn't. It just didn't click. I can't do the care he needs, sadly. And it's gutting for me because I really tried. And even though, I don't feel that intense love for him that I do for John. I would never want Paul to be put in harm, or not cared for. That isn't how the foster care system works. Me being unable to cope with Paul, who has extreme needs, means I should never be able to care for potential 10s of children that I can support throughout my lifetime. Because I cannot support one child is severe. Sen means that any potential foster children that I could support should what? Just continue living in residential group homes. Have a think about how that logic works for you. Me admitting I can't cope with one child means that 10s of future children could go without care and love in your world. Does that make sense to you? He is already on the highest package of support, which is immense, and I'm entirely grateful to my agency. But even with it, I'm not in a position to support him how he needs it, unfortunately. He already has a place in a residential home, and I will still visit him. I don't want to just move him there and pretend he never was part of my life. I'm not that heartless, at least. LOL. Update. It has now been a few days since Paul moved out, so I thought I would give a little update. Firstly, I want to thank everyone who took the time to read my previous post and for those who offered support and understanding. It meant a lot, honestly. Paul has been placed with a new family who specialize in caring for children with severe special needs. I believe this is the best environment for him, and he seems to be settling in well. I am keeping in touch with his new carers, and they've assured me that he's receiving the care and attention he needs. At first the house felt different. Quieter but also emptier. There's a lingering sense of guilt, but I'm also more at peace knowing he's in a place better suited to his needs. John and I have had more time to spend together, which has been nice. We've talked a lot about everything that's happened, and I'm grateful for his understanding and support. I've also started seeing a therapist to help work through the guilt I've been feeling and to help me grieve. Yesterday, my agency reached out saying they have 2 little boys needing housing for a short-term placement. They said initially 6 weeks, but it could be extended. They are coming tomorrow, and I'm excited. They're 9 and 11 and are coming directly from their birth families. This will be my first proper placement, so I would be lying if I said I didn't feel a little anxious. Thank you again to everyone who reached out. Relevant comments. Comment 1. It sounds like everything is working out well for both you and John as well. Paul and the kids you're able to help now with these 2 and in the future. Good job taking care of yourself in this difficult time with therapy too. Comment 2. So glad to hear you made the right decision. Sounds like you're very awesome, and I hope your new placement will be a good fit. Debbie Coleman 1010. Good luck to you and all the boys. You did the right thing for you all. You tried and it just didn't work out, and anyone telling you differently has never even come close to taking care of someone with severe disabilities. Fiancé's graduation party exposes dealbreaker, LGBTQ+ acceptance splits 4-year relationship. We met in college and decided to not get married until we graduated to focus on our studies, and we have been dating for 4 years. He proposed to me during his last semester of his master's program, and he is studying to become a teacher. I graduated with my bachelor's not too long ago, but his graduation party is showing a side of him that I believe to be a deal breaker. His graduation party will be held at his father's house, which has a pretty big backyard, and many of the people from our wedding will be going. However, unlike our wedding invitation list, he said he didn't want to invite Jason, fake name, and his parents because he recently came out as gay, and that led to a conversation. Jason and his parents were invited to our wedding, so that made me ask why he didn't want them at the graduation. He said that the wedding was an us thing, and that he was willing to compromise because it was our wedding. But when it came to the graduation, he said it was a him thing because he was the one who graduated. So he didn't have to compromise, because he did the school work. When I asked what he meant by compromise, he said he'd tolerate Jason at our wedding because that's what couples do. But the graduation was about him. When I asked if he'd support potential future children that came out, he said he'd tolerate it for me, although he disagreed with it. It is my fault for not asking that question earlier before we became engaged, but he made his stance clear. He said he'd be more distant to a child that turned out to be gay and would probably let me do more of the parenting if so. He's always been a gentleman and amazing to me, but he grew up religious, parents were Christians, although he said he's not anymore. I don't think we have a future after he said he would distance himself from a child who came out and leave it to me, and I just want to ask how to tell him so. I'm thinking about another conversation like we had, but I want to ask for the best way to go about it. What would be the best way to tell him that I don't think we have a future together given his stance? First update. Reddit recovered June 11, 2023. A lot of people suggested talking to my fiancé in an open space or my parents' home about my deal breaker, but I wasn't able to do it at my parents' home, although I got to talk to them and they agreed with my reasoning. They said they were disturbed by how easily he admitted he would distance himself from a potentially gay child and that it was a good thing it came out before the wedding. I also got a lot of people calling me out for not broaching the topic of gay children or how he felt about LGBTQ in the years we dated, and that's on me for never thinking to bring up. Going forward, it will be something I ask early on before getting emotionally invested in a relationship. Because I couldn't speak to him at my parents' place, we ended up talking at a place we went for lunch, and I told him that I couldn't go forward in the relationship because he repeatedly said he wouldn't accept any children who came out. But when I said that, he didn't try to take it back and said that he was willing to compromise for me. He said it was better than pretending, to agree with coming out and that he was being honest, but I told him I was done because of his beliefs, and he didn't take it well. He took it fine at the restaurant and finished lunch without saying much else, and he kept saying I was overreacting and that he couldn't believe I wanted to end the relationship over him wanting to compromise. My parents have been helping me with canceling the wedding, but he took his spite online. He made a Facebook rant a few days after that, doubled down on a lot of the things he said, and he said he made it to explain his side of things. He said that I was breaking up with him despite him being honest about his willingness to compromise and not hiding it like many couples internalize things. He also said our country was changing things that were always wrong, such as gay rights, and he said that people were trying to shove gay rights down everyone's throats. He also said that you can't say anything these days because of canceled culture and Me Too catering to sensitive people. And he said that the value of education was dropping because people were becoming more stupid. He also said that that was why he wanted to become a teacher because there weren't enough good ones, and those were just a few of the things in his rant. He also said that Me Too enabled people from the consequences of their behavior, when they should instead look at themselves in the mirror and how they dress too. He never said anything about Me Too during the duration of our relationship or anything that was outspoken about gay rights until his graduation planning, and it was honestly surprising to read what he wrote. As I said above, I will be asking these questions at the start of dating going forward. Lastly, some people suggested reporting my ex-fiancé to the school in my previous post because they said he could be harmful to gay students, and I especially agree after the post he made. I did receive a lot of hateful DMs from people who agreed with my ex and said that I'd be wrong to contact the school. Some even accused me of considering canceling him in DMs and a few comments on my last post, but I don't see it as that. I see calling the school as something that's important because this mindset is harmful to so many, and he is already a substitute teacher at an elementary school. He began subbing before he graduated. I want to ask what would be the best way to go about it. Whether that would be an email, phone call, or potential visit to do it in person. I have already screenshotted the post he made, and I've only answered questions about the breakup from people who have called so far. My parents are helping me with some people who have called them too, but that is my last. Second update, August 20th, 2023. I didn't really plan to make another post, but I received a lot more DMs after my update was shared that made me want to come back, and I read through many of the comments there too, which made me want to address something. To those who called me out for not seeing any signs of his homophobia earlier. You're absolutely right. I just assumed the best and never thought to question it, but I will now ask the tough questions going forward at the beginning of future relationships, such as political stances along with opinions on race and gender, and that should help prevent time from being wasted on people similar to my ex. I just assumed the best because we have another friend who is trans and was always cool with him, and my ex used to like the post that he made when he came out some years back. He also liked a post that he shared at a pride walk, so there was that too. Going forward, I won't assume anymore because at the end of the day, a like really doesn't mean anything. I sent an email with an attachment of his now deleted Facebook rant to a few places. The school he subs at was subbing at before he graduated, and the school district along with the county office of education where we live thanks to advice provided by a commenter who I DM'd for more advice. I also told people I knew about why we were breaking up and showed them the post, and that did most of the talking for me. I broke up with my ex before contacting the school, and I decided on a text because we didn't live together and also had my dad return the ring to his parents' home where he gave it to his mom and had minimal interaction. I was too scared/cowardly to do it myself, so I took them on their offer to drop it off for me. In the text, I told him that I couldn't marry him due to his homophobic comments and opinion along with telling him that my parents would drop off the ring so that it was in writing, and I blocked him after sending. He didn't have any belongings at my place, but he's been livid about the way I handled it and I'll admit that I was afraid to do it face to face because I was a coward, but he took to Facebook again. He made another post talking about how dad returned the ring instead of me and that I didn't give him credit for being honest about his willingness to compromise and proceeded to ghost him, pretty much erasing the purpose of his deleted post by referring to the same points. I'll admit that I was cowardly about how I handled it, but what really surprised me was when his dad took to Facebook about it too, and he accused me of canceling him for an opinion he shared along with saying that communication in marriage is dead. He called me reader_Ed in his post and that people like me were the reason Trump lost, because no one had morals. He also said that Trump needed to win again to stop canceling culture, because his son was punished for his opinion. I want to remind you that my ex was not religious despite his parents being big Christians, but I'm guessing he vented to them about it and is back involved in some way given the post. The last thing I'll say is this, and I kept it to the end because I'm not looking for advice as I'm only taking it from a lawyer on this matter that my parents have helped me contact. My ex called my job and apparently told them that I had CP and that was why he left, and I don't know where he pulled that out of his ass from. I don't know if he talked about the emails I sent to the district involving his post, but my dad seems to think that it might be retaliation, although he's not sure, because it's only been a few weeks. He thinks it could be retaliation for my letter to the district or for ghosting him, but we're looking into a lawyer as I was recently made aware of the accusation at my job when I was talked to, and that is where my focus lies. I'm not going to make any future posts because I've still received a lot of hateful DMs telling me that I was wrong to report him to the school, but I stand with my decision to do so. I really appreciate the advice I received and hope that at the least, telling the school will have done some good. Someone also suggested looking into LGBTQ things to support and give energy to, and I'll look into that once I'm past this job situation. Third update, September 9th, 2023. I said that last time was going to be my last post, but I really mean it with this one. Before I get into why though, I just want to say again that I'm sorry for not seeing his homophobia earlier. Many people have cursed at me in DMs asking how 4 years of dating never showed it, and I thought I apologized in my last post, but I kept getting those messages, so I just want to say again that I'm sorry and that going forward, I'll ask for political gender beliefs on the first date to not waste time with potentially hateful people. I'm just tired of being yelled at about it, and there have been some supportive comments too. But the majority of them are either calling me out for not seeing it or for wrongfully canceling him and agreeing with many of the points his father made in his Facebook rant. If the news was on TV as we were doing something, eating, my ex didn't voice his homophobia then as many asked. And when we talked about kids, it was wrong of me to not ask what he'd think if they came out. Lesson learned for next time. As previously mentioned, we also had a friend who came out, and he's very close to them and accepting. But with that out of the way, I'll get to why this is my last post aside from the majority of hateful DMs. My ex's dad hasn't stopped posting about me on Facebook, and it's all pretty much the same as canceling culture rants from last time and calling me a leftist, among other things. I have also received a number of social media DMs spouting similar hate to the DMs I received on Reddit, and I directly blame him and his dad for this. I mentioned last time that I was looking into a lawyer, and my parents have helped me with the search, which has been helpful because of how his dad continued. His dad posted my socials and home address to one of his Facebook posts, thus why I deleted my Instagram. And he said that he was going to cancel me back too. Another reason I contacted a lawyer was because I received a threatening DM, but that's the most I'm going to go into specifics. I only received one of those, but it was enough to make me and my parents want to be on the safer side. And that's another reason why I'm done making these posts, because I want this whole thing to be over soon. I really appreciate the supportive DMs I received in the midst of the hateful ones, and I also appreciate the majority of supportive comments from Boru that were sent to me by someone in a DM too. I really hope the whole thing is over soon because it's been draining, but hopefully the lawyer can at least provide some peace of mind. Fourth update, January 27th, 2024. I'm going to update the bottom of my post, instead of a new one, because of the sensitivity of what's happened the past few months. The past few months have been really tough, and the encouragement I've gotten from reading my story on Baru has helped more than I can express. Everyone there has been really supportive, so much to the point that I reread the comments for reassurance when I feel down sometimes. When I broke up with him and told the school about him, I didn't know the next few months would be so tough, so I need to vent to get it out because things have been stressful. When I mentioned how my ex's father has been posting about me on Facebook in my previous posts, he posted my home address, and a link to my socials, in one of his rants, where he said he'd cancel me back for canceling his son. And that led to me, among other things, looking into a lawyer. However, I also moved back into my parents for a few reasons since my last post. Someone slashed my tires in front of my home at night, and to this day I don't know who. I have no proof that it's connected to him putting my address on Facebook, but I think it could have been. I also made a police report, but they didn't find who did it. I also mentioned in my last post that I was getting threats without going into specifics. But to be honest, some of them were DEA_H threats that gave me lots of anxiety. I'm guessing they could be from some of my ex's friends or his father's, but I also received a lot of messages on my socials, since his Facebook post where he linked my socials, that led to me deleting my socials, many cursing me out and calling me woke among other things. My Reddit posts were also picked up by numerous TikTok accounts that share Reddit stories with a video game playing in the background, and I was recently made aware of 3 of them that seemed to garner some attention, one with 80k views and a couple hundred comments. Another with 20k, and a fair bit of the comments were supportive of my ex. That also directed traffic back to my Reddit post that led to a few more hateful DMs since my last update, along with a fair bit of supportive ones too, so that was another wave of messages to go through. I have no quarrel with the videos themselves because many comments were supportive too, and the channels share other Reddit stories too. The fact that some commented in agreement with my ex doesn't make the video bad either, but was just a realization of homophobia. Some comments made fun of Jason for coming out while others said my ex was right to uninvited him. It's just been a lot, and I came back to get it off my chest. I know I'll get more hateful comments after updating, but I also want to say I don't regret what I did. My ex hid his homophobia. We had friends who came out who he supported, and he came to pride marches with them too. As many commented, the mask came off eventually. In regards to the CP accusations from my ex-father, child pornography for those who were confused in the comments in my previous post where I didn't indicate, my parents helped hire a lawyer, but I won't go into specifics on that. All I'll say is that we're taking it seriously and are taking legal action against it. If anything comes from it, I'll share it in an update. The tire slashing and threats also did a number on my mental health, but it showed me some things too. The DMs also showed me just how ruthless people are, strangers who would never say such things to my face. I'm considering moving out of state, but I'm currently with my parents for safety reasons now. I especially appreciate reading the supportive comments DMs that aren't hateful because they really help, and I'm also with a therapist, but progress hasn't been great yet. There's a lot of mental health stuff I don't feel comfortable going into specifics about. It's been a lot of craziness, but I hope it calms down with time. Final update, made by OOP's parents. August 3, 2024. I have been in contact recently about something my husband and I wanted to share, and we asked if she would post it to Boru after they covered some of our daughter's updates. The person who made the previous updates was our daughter, and she shared the post with us as we tried to navigate her situation. Many of the comments from Boru were very supportive, and that is a big reason why I'm here today. The main reason, however, is because she committed suicide a few weeks ago and the funeral has already happened. We fully supported her decision to leave her ex after he showed colors we hadn't seen before. We were also in the process of receiving legal advice regarding the accusations that were made against her too. But even as we did, she was often overwhelmed and depressed. Even to the point of not wanting to get out of bed sometimes or even eat on certain days. We were able to help her find a therapist, but there was so much going on all at once. From the death threats and DMs to the slashing of tires and her ex's father posting her address alongside one of his online rants, she ended up taking an unpaid leave of absence from her job shortly after the slashing to move in with us. Before that, her job also called her into the office to discuss the allegations made against her from her ex, and the culmination of everything was so overwhelming. Her ex and his father posted so much about her with no regards to doxing her, and we are in the process of pursuing them legally for the role they played in everything. Regarding her ex, he is still a teacher as of writing this. His father hasn't stopped attacking her online even after she passed, and we have documented everything he posted. We also told everyone who knew her how proud we were not only of her decision to break up, but also to ensure that his hatred wasn't spread to others by reporting his post to the district, and we owe thanks to the many Redditors who told her how to report it to the district. There were also some comments and DMs that said she brought backlash upon herself by reporting him, but we believe that she did the right thing and that she was braver than most might have been in her shoes. She could have done nothing and simply broke up with him, and no one would have batted an eye. She wasn't obliged to do anything else. But she felt convicted to care for kids she'd never meet. And if she prevented one kid from falling prey to his hatred, it is that much more worth it. For her sake, we are continuing to pursue her ex and his father legally. But we wanted to thank everyone who told her how to tell the district, because we need more people like her and you, and making this post is therapeutic in itself because we've told others how she did the right thing as well. We truly appreciate everyone who supported her and gave her advice. Am I the asshole for breaking up with my unmotivated girlfriend who has nothing going for her and might become homeless? I, male 24, met a girl, female 22, in a community college class when I was 20. We came from very different backgrounds. I was middle class trying to find a cheaper way to go to college. She was living in almost poverty going to school because she was forced to by her parents who were threatening to kick her out. She dropped out about a year into her schooling while I continued and finished. During her first year we formed a relationship and she moved into my apartment more or less. Her relationship with her parents is pretty much non-existent and she has little to no outside friends besides one or two women she knew from high school, who are deadbeats in my opinion. I make around $80K a year, so we live relatively comfortably, but there's still some strain on finances. I can't say exactly when I started losing feelings, but the fact that she refuses to work, will not cook and wants to eat out every day, does not want to go to school, and continuously wants to buy and spend money on clothes and other stuff just slowly started grating me more and more. I work in a female-dominated workplace, and having conversations, and interacting with coworkers who have so much going for them, have fun hobbies, and aspirations makes it all the more worse when your girlfriend is chronically online and spends 7 hours a day scrolling through Instagram or TikTok reels and thinks having sex is all she needs to do on her end. Our relationship isn't bad, we have fights every now and then like an average couple, have an active sex life, but that's pretty much it. From her perspective, if I broke up with her it would be out of nowhere, but I'm pretty much done, and now I could move on quickly and have nothing to be regretful about, as shitty as it sounds. The problem comes in her having no job, no finances, almost no friends and no family support unit. I'm not a monster, I don't want to make someone virtually homeless, but I don't want to be stuck with someone who has nothing going for them either. I don't know what to do. Edit. Thank you for all the advice in this post. I don't know if this sub allows updates, but I'll talk to her tomorrow about this and start the process of working this out. Relevant comments. OP explains. Yeah, if she was a toxic or just bad partner I wouldn't have too much trouble ending it, but she's fairly nice, just very lazy. I've tried to talk her into trying different hobbies or interests to get her active, but she always turns them down each time. How long? She wasn't as bad when we were still in school, she at least helped cook and had some aspirations to be a nurse. But I guess when she started getting comfortable her habits built on until it got to this point. This wouldn't have been a 4-year relationship if this was how it started. She only leaves the apartment when I take her to get food, she either sleeps or is on her phone. Is she miserable with her life? She's not really miserable. She always sends me 30+ memes at work on IG, and is honestly a pretty funny person. She has her mood swings on some days, but that's how she usually is. I've tried talking to her about this more than once, but she either thinks I'm not being serious or tries to change the subject. The one time I was serious she said would try looking at courses again, but it eventually fell through and I stopped trying. She just doesn't really care. Update 1. For starters, I want to thank everyone for all the advice I was given on the last thread, as it helped me formulate how I would go about doing this. When I made that post I was having an extremely bad day and didn't expect it to blow up like it did, so I don't think I was able to give her a fair defense. Also, I got dozens of messages, ranging from asking me to hand out her contact info so they could take her in as a live-in sex girlfriend, to helpful advice telling me to start hiding anything valuable. When I had said that she had come from poverty, her father is a laborer while her mother also lives a similar lifestyle to how she lives now. Their home is maybe 1,100 square feet and in a terrible place in town, and given her father's past ultimatum, I don't think he will take her back, as she hasn't been back home in years. Yes, I have talked to her about this, since January, maybe 3 times. Either by gently telling her it would be nice if she went out more to find a hobby, at the very least to flat out say she was wasting away on her phone and that she needs to get a job or go back to school. Each time she either changes the subject, makes it a joke, or follows through for a couple of days before going back to her usual self. She is a kind partner, who asks me about my day, always tries to make me laugh or lighten the mood when I get annoyed, and generally shows a lot of affection. Which makes me feel terrible when none of that works anymore, and I just see her as another person. Now for the confrontation. Last night when we were both getting ready for bed, I didn't take my clothes off and instead just stood there telling her we needed to talk. At first she was just smiling and jumping up and down on the bed with her knees thinking I wasn't as serious as I was, but eventually she was able to read the mood. I told her something wasn't feeling right anymore, that I've tried to make this work and be patient with her for the past few years, but I didn't know how much more time I was willing to spend waiting for her to get a job, go back to school, or just get a hobby if anything. I told her that it annoyed and grated me that she just didn't seem to care about herself, and that I hated that she had no goals or aspirations. This was probably the first time in a long time she was as attentive as she's ever been during this conversation. And agreed to whatever I was saying, even also giving suggestions on where she can apply, what courses were starting to interest her, and even said I could look over her as she submitted applications online to make sure she wasn't lying. In her head it seemed like I was still willing to make this work, and a part of me believed this would finally be the moment that she would change. So it made the next part even harder for me and for her. At first I told her I didn't love her the same way, which slowly but eventually led to me saying I didn't feel anything at all about this relationship and was jaded. I was tired and wanted a fresh start with someone who was more goal-oriented, and wanted something more out of life. When she realized what I was getting at, she started to cry and asked why I didn't mention this sooner, and I said I've always asked her to cook, to go out with me to try something out, or to just go back to school, even when I offered to pay for her classes. Anything. She said she understands that part, but was upset why I didn't say it was leading to me losing interest in her, because from her perspective it seemed as if I still loved her all the same. She started apologizing, saying she wasn't in the right mental state and saying nothing was motivating her. And she genuinely had no interest in any hobbies, the only thing she liked was spending time with me, which is all she looked forward to on the day when I came home. None of this was really affecting my emotions besides making me feel uncomfortable. So I tried to continue by saying, I think her lifestyle would be better with another person, but she immediately cut me off and became more panicked. She started to apologize again for what she's done and said she would be a better girlfriend, that she would go with me tomorrow to wherever I wanted to go and would look for courses in August that she could start doing. But she did not want to lose me since she had nothing else in life and absolutely hated that I stopped loving her. There were so many tears and snot that I said we would have this conversation again when she calmed down, and we eventually did in an hour or so. She pleaded to give her 2 months to make a change and give her another chance, and promised that she would change. Again she listed off all the places she would apply to and said she would be a better partner. I never wanted to make her homeless, so this seemed like a good settlement. Even though I still had my doubts. I then reaffirmed that I wanted to see other people, but she seemed much more adamant on this issue than the aspirations issue that she would be able to fix this. She said just give her a month to try and make the relationship work, and asked me again and again on what she could do to make her love her again, and that she didn't want me to hate her. She said that this was the worst part of it all. In the only person that she had just done. It seemed as if she was about to break down again, so I said okay, we'll see how this relationship is in a month. In my mind, if I'm allowing her 2 months to get back on her feet, then by a month she would already be ready to move on. I also didn't want her to suffer a complete mental breakdown while I was still living with her, so giving her a month to let her fix the relationship would give her enough time to accept things. I slept on the couch last night and will probably continue doing so for a while. She came out at about 3 a.m. wanting to talk some more, but I said I was exhausted and we would do it tomorrow. She then slept on the floor beside me for the rest of the night apologizing again. When I told her to stop, she silently said okay and sobbed for a bit under her blanket. But that's everything that's happened so far. This was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I regret nothing and feel much better letting everything out. I don't know how this situation will be in 2 months, but I was firm that it was the deadline. This post will probably get buried, so I probably won't do another update since I don't think anyone will care about this in a week or a month, but I will definitely private message those of you who have been helping me through this on how it turns out or those who just want to be updated. But yeah, thanks. Edit, for all of you who keep asking what my workplace is, I'm a RN. Update 2, I feel like this will be an easier place to post since it's my page and I don't have to worry about over spamming with small or inconsequential updates anywhere else, as it's only for those wanting to read. I want everyone who has privately messaged me to know I read them all, especially those of you who have gone through similar circumstances as me and have shared your stories. I've been doing some self-reflection and think I know how I want to go about this that will help with my lack of communication skills. I know I'm not a perfect person, but I still stand by my decisions I made that night 100% through and through. I might post an update sooner in a week or so, as the day after our fight I'm filled with a bit more hope than usual, Don't know how long it will last, but better make use of it. But again, I just wanted to post this for everyone sharing your stories with me privately, as I can't message you all, as it's been helping me make decisions on what to do about this all immensely. Hello, I have a partner who wants to start taking an interest in baking. She's a bit self-conscious and doesn't like asking or looking for outside help, and I'm kind of clueless in the subject, but I want to be able to find a resource to give some help for her. Are there any YouTube playlists or something similar you would all recommend to get started for someone who has little experience cooking as well? Update 3. This is a long post, and no, I'm not going to give a TLDR. Hey all, it's been about a week since my last post and I thought I'd give an update. A lot has happened, including the explosion of my first update thread. I have over 50 plus DMs asking me for an update, so instead of copy and pasting replies, I'll do another one. I find it easier to write than to speak in many situations, so this has been a great way to help my decisions and clear my head. Writing everything down has helped tremendously, and I will continue to do so until this is all over, and I will nuke everything afterwards. After the night confrontation, we didn't really speak all too much at home, with it being dry and awkward for a day or two, but I have been told I'm a workaholic by nature, so it was easy for me to stay at the hospital as a distraction, but in that time she did start to cook again. We weren't in the mood to go out to eat together. Eventually though, I sat down with her after she asked for a more thorough conversation on why I felt our relationship was failing. She promised not to cry or get upset, but wanted me to be 100% upfront so she had a better way of understanding, stating she wanted to try everything to fix this. I was really apprehensive about this, and I can't really explain why, but given being together for 4 years, I wanted to at least make an effort myself out of respect, even though a large part of me was angry for even doing so, as I feel I've never had the same from her. There have been many different camps in my last update, the main ones being kick her out immediately and leave her before it gets worse, try to find a way to fix our relationship or end the relationship altogether but continue living with someone who would probably become absolutely neurotic. If I was going to let her stay for 2 months, I would absolutely not be dealing with that. I took consideration in all these main advice discussions and read through almost every reply. Even the most assumptive, bizarre and downright unhinged Redditor takes. More importantly, I took heavy influence from those who have shared with me their past stories, which either led to them being stuck in loveless relationships for years or eventually being able to overcome their problems and have an even stronger connection. Thank you again for your private messages. I read through a lot of your lives. Now for our conversation. She said she saw something on TikTok where couples put a phone on a table with a timer and wanted to do something similar, for each person to air what made them upset. I said that was dumb. If we were going to talk about our problems, it would be better if there was no time limit. She eventually agreed and said I could go first, asking me first when was the time that I completely lost my love for her. As I said before, it was never one action, but a grating feeling that got worse and worse until it got to this point, and I told her that. So she then asked when was the time I felt the most angry. I said it would take some time to think for me, and she said that was fine. After a few minutes something came to mind. I couldn't formulate the right words at first, but it eventually just started to come out. I told her the worst time was when I was first starting at my hospital. To keep it short, the tempo was brutal. It was constant work with little to no downtime, as I was constantly learning new things that school had never taught me, while being expected to be able to handle it as a professional. It was without a doubt the most stressed I've ever been, and I feel like other RNs can relate here. That year hardened the way I think now. That hard work does pay off, if you have the drive and the passion. I told her I think that was when I started losing feelings the fastest, seeing her at home doing absolutely nothing. Coming home to no food made, to her not working a job, to her not learning anything, completely stuck to the internet with nothing to show for it. I said it made me even more upset when I had given suggestions for jobs with pretty easy schedules, or to find a new interest in school that would pan out better than last time, only to be rejected at every attempt. I told her flat out that it disgusted me. She asked me why I didn't make this a bigger issue at the time, that I should have communicated this to her, but I said there's some things that shouldn't have to be said. I shouldn't have to remind her to wash her ass, eat, do something other than mindlessly scrolling on her phone for hours at a day, every day. I also told her that after coming home from the hospital during more stressful days, the last thing I wanted was to spend my time begging my girlfriend to do something productive, so I held my tongue and settled, as she was still nice and caring. I had no other reasons to end it, and so the resentment grew worse from then on. It was around here that I became more mean to my regret now, but I will still input it as I have everything else. I told her that when she dropped nursing, I was upset since I felt that she was more than capable of doing what I had done. But after spending more time in the relationship, and spending more time getting to know her, I knew that with the type of person she was, there was no way she could have ever finished. Which is why I suggested easier and more laid-back jobs, less demanding majors for school, Shit, even if she just cooked or found an interesting hobby at that point, I would have appreciated it. Still, she chose to do nothing for years. It's just the type of person she was and why I felt done for her romantically over time. She asked me if I hated her, and I said I didn't know. I told her she was very loving and kind, but I hated how she handled her life to this point. That I felt no ill will towards her after airing everything out, but I also felt nothing else. I just felt done and ready to move on. Throughout this conversation we kept eye contact, and there were times it seemed like she would break, but like she said, she remained as calm as she could while I said what I had to say. I told her I was done and she could say her piece now, but she asked if we could continue the conversation later and locked herself in our room for the rest of the day. The next day we sat down again and finished the conversation. She told me that she thinks she's depressed, saying that she didn't feel sad before that night, just had no motivation to do anything. I had a couple of messages telling me to ask her to get tested for ADHD, but when I started bringing it up she was very adamant that is not something she felt comfortable with. I knew she didn't like needles or going to the hospital in general, but her flat-out refusing to get tested for disorders when I told her it was not at all like a regular hospital visit surprised me. She asked me if she was able to change her behavior. Would I give her another chance? I said I didn't know, as I felt nothing right now and didn't know if her doing it would bring any feeling back. Especially since it took my breaking point to do so. She asked if there was any compromise, and I told her again, if in a month I felt like there was enough reason to stay together I would, but that there was no guarantee that my feelings would return. But I would match any effort she also put out. She was frustrated by my answer, but I said that's how it would be. She gave me a piece of paper to look at that she was working on last night that had a list of hobbies and interests she wanted to look into, the two major ones being photography and cooking again. She told me that she was looking into these while also showing me her phone, giving proof that she was putting in applications on Indeed and Glassdoor for some entry-level positions that she might get hired in. I told her if she was able to show enough passion or interest in these hobbies that she showed, I would not care about her working, just anything to improve herself. But if she didn't do anything at all, then it would be best to look for a new job to help her if she moves out. I've also been asked in private messages if I have any personal friends to talk to. There's two female coworkers I confide some information in given how many hours we work together at our hospital, and who I completely trust, as in my opinion they are extremely grounded. They both said I would eventually get love bombed and this would all go back to how it once was, and that I needed to stand firm with moving on. They're very helpful friends who have even offered to let me stay over for a few nights, giving the reason that I would fall for her manipulation if I continued being anywhere near her, in their own words. But it didn't feel right since I'm still technically in a relationship, but I said I would consider it if the situation worsened. But again, I find them grounded, so I always try to take their advice to heart. Despite numerous messages from you all privately or openly telling me that this will be a mistake, I want to make the attempt to give this one last try. Though I feel heavily closed and guarded and still feel indifferent with our current situation. But a lot of you have told me this can eventually change with enough work from both parties. I have also taken the advice of those saying to cut off sex, which was my intention from the start anyway, by continuing to sleep in the living room. But each day she has been sleeping on the floor right below me, even when I tell her I'd rather be alone with my thoughts, telling me this is something she would not accept. But that's everything so far. Next update will probably be at the month mark, as there's nothing else I feel like I need to say for now, just waiting to see if things can get better now that we're working on this somewhat. Refusing my boyfriend's threesome request led to a wedding drama and a shocking revelation. Am I the asshole? This is a throwaway because too much identifying info is on my main page. IF29 met my boyfriend Michael M35 at a show I performed in. I am a theater person as a hobby, and he complimented my performance and bought me a drink. We have been together now for a little over a year. His sister got married last week and I was initially pleased to be asked to be a bridesmaid, but also a bit surprised as she barely knows me, but I thought this was an attempt to have an excuse to also get to know each other better. Michael and I got into an argument the week before because he said that he wanted to entertain the thought of spicing up our sex life and having a threesome. He said since I was bi, why not? I didn't like the idea too much and said so, and it devolved into a petty Cold War and he started to ignore my messages after he left my place. He didn't reply to me at all until the day before the wedding, asking what time he needed to pick me up since we can't go separate, otherwise, people will gossip about us. He barely said anything to me the whole time we traveled to the venue. The wedding was fine, but at the reception he got me a plate and leaned in to kiss me, but I shied away and he got up to mingle. I started feeling ill not too long after and 911 was called. I realized I was having an allergic reaction but had my pen, but still had to be carted off by the ambulance, and that's when someone who was looking for Michael said that he had left with some of the other groomsmen to a bar nearby. I called 6 times and texted that it was an emergency as I was getting checked out by the paramedics, and again when they strongly suggested I go to the hospital, but he never replied. I was released by the hospital and called him to ask him to pick me up, but he didn't pick up, so I woke up my best friend and she took me home and stayed with me overnight to make sure I was okay. The next morning Michael called me, but I was still asleep, so he left me a lengthy voicemail yelling at me that I ruined his sister's wedding and that I always have to make things about me. He came over to further berate me and told me he should just break up with me at this point as I'm dramatic and this is all too much, so I pointed out that he had gotten my plate, knew full well that I have a legit allergy to coconut, and that his sister had told me afterwards that he knew that the cake he gave me was the coconut cream cake, as all the food had signs saying what it was and what the ingredients were, as I'm not the only person with allergies that attended. He left telling me that he can't talk to me when I'm this way. I was honestly exhausted, so I didn't bother going after him. But his father called me to ask how I was doing, and after I answered he then told me how I'm hurting Michael's heart by blaming him, and Michael has been inconsolable since we fought. I texted Michael to ask if we could talk, but the conversation went back around somehow to the threesome and how I don't respect him even in intimate settings or want to hear him out regarding his needs and make things about me. I am so confused because to me this feels manipulative, but I respect his father so much. I go to their church and he is a pastor there. So to have him tell me I'm in the wrong threw me. Edit. A lot of comments are suggesting that this was intentional, and I have actually never considered he gave me something I'm allergic to on purpose, and certainly not to use against me to leverage in our argument, but I think I may have to come clean and talk to his parents. I know them well, so hopefully it won't go too badly. Small update. Michael texted me this morning to apologize. He said the wedding was stressing him out and he had a lot on his mind, so he accidentally handed me the plate he meant for himself, not the one for me. He said he didn't know I was in the hospital and felt bad he wasn't there for me, but he left the reception with some of the groomsmen to blow off much needed steam. I don't know how I feel about it all, so I just replied, okay. He is now asking to come over and talk this out in person. Second edit. For any and all of you calling me stupid or implying I am a child and why am I still with this guy, etc. Just know, you remind me a lot of him, of how he used to put me down and bully me, and it's a real wonder of mine if you treat people in your life like he did me. I suspect you do. Glad to be rid of him and indifferent about you. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Be honest. Have you, now that you are looking back, seen red flags like this? This behavior likely didn't just show up. Have you ever gotten ill after a disagreement with him? Oddly enough, I am sitting with my BFF and she asked me the same question, and yes, actually. Our first real argument that I can remember, I was down with a stomach bug for almost a week and he visited me and made soup. Then the only big argument I can recall outside this one, he wanted to use labels really soon onto us going on some dates and I didn't, and the next morning, I was sick with chest pains and stomach cramps. I don't want to sound dramatic or accusatory, but since people have commented he might have purposefully given me something I'm allergic to, I just don't know anymore. Comment 2. NTA. The two of you are completely incompatible. He wants threesomes. You want to attend wedding receptions without leaving in an ambulance. Okay. When I read this, I was with Bestie and we've been drinking, and the scream I scrumptious laughing so hard nearly killed me more effectively than the coconut LMAO update 1. Well, many of you were right, I should not have met him in person, but I did. He took me out to lunch insisting he pay for it all, and it was incredibly over the top. He had flowers and a written letter of apology, but as some of you messaged me, his apologies dodged the point by way of "if I hurt you," or "that you're feeling X or Y feeling," etc. He quoted some scriptures and said he has repented as his carelessness caused me harm. I wasn't much moved by any of it until he said how much his family loves me and how much our church roots for us as a couple, and I kinda sat back and realized that one flimsy reason I was even entertaining forgiving him and staying was because of the pressure I dealt with as the GF of a pastor's son. It occurred to me that there were so many times I let things slide because he is the heir apparent, so he had the power in the social aspect of our community. Sorry, I know I'm rambling, but I'm emotional and tipsy. I remember just staring at him and saying it was incredibly alarming that by now he can't be aware of my one ingle allergy, and that he didn't bother to tell his own GF he was stepping out with the guys, or even that he was stepping out of his own sister's wedding at all. He then said it was really actually kind of stupid of me to eat a cake that had coconut, and implied I'm an idiot for not realizing what I had was coconut. I realized then he would never accept that he was in the wrong, and thus there was no point. I stood up and smiled and said, "You know what, don't worry about it. Thanks for dinner. Good night." To which he replied that if I wasn't going to grow up and accept his apology, I'm a waste of his time. He uses that a lot whenever we disagree, and it usually hurts me deeply, but this time it was like a Rolodex of memories flooded my brain, and I really suspect he's been deliberately making me sick whenever we disagree to teach me a lesson. I said I was done and he needn't waste his time with me from this point on and left. I then sent screenshots to his father explaining the situation as best I can without blaming Michael for prior illnesses without proof, and I got a text about 20 minutes ago from his father. His father is incredibly disappointed in my immaturity and hurt that I wouldn't even give it until Sunday at church where we can pray together, talk it out and heal. I felt this way for a while, but I was able to say at this time that using religion as a tool of guilt is low, and I am no longer concerned with his version of God, as that version is a judgmental, cruel, and heartless jerk, while the one I always thought of was loving, compassionate and kind, and I am done. I was told by him and by further emails that I am no longer welcome at my church until I reconcile with my true husband and learn compassion and respect for my leaders. So I guess that's it. I will enjoy sleeping in tomorrow and eating coconut-free food, while lazing about my home rather than going to 3 separate church services starting at 8 a.m. and then figure it all out from there. I don't know how to sign off, but I do watch a concerning amount of Charlotte Dobry videos, and she usually ends things with practical shit like, do your laundry or something. So I will just say, live for yourself, feed your soul and know you're enough. I certainly am going to put in the work to get there, and I hope we all make it to the other side, content and filled with love and joy. And by the way, F you Michael. I know you are reading this. I know you know it's me, and I hope your socks are always just a little soggy. OP added in the comments. Here I forgot to add to my post, but I didn't want to bring the threesome requests into it. Well, I sent his daddy screenshots of some texts. If you'd like some drama, here are the top 2. It was the night I sent him home after he tried and failed to pressure me into sex. He told me that I was missing out and should be grateful since your body makes me sick, but my love for you is stronger. Would it kill you to be grateful enough to just do a HJ? And on his birthday, I had just been in the hospital after passing out from exhaustion and dehydration and went straight to his party. I stayed at his place until everyone left, and I left soon after helping clean all but the kitchen, and he sent, you could have cleaned the kitchen then or stayed over for sex. Then you're a waste of time if I don't even get birthday sex, thanks a lot. And after both B suggested adding a third. His dad hasn't responded. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Holy crap, and you stayed with him? You poor girl, no one deserves someone like that in their life, but you didn't say if you told his dad about him sending you to the hospital and potentially killing you. Because we both know, and the rest of Reddit knows, that he did that intentionally. And if there was proof of him giving you that cake, you could probably send his happy ass to jail. OP, I didn't and don't have the best self-esteem. And here is the only black woman in the town that I've known of. I've always known that I'm considered less desirable. Not saying that's right, but just knowing where I live. Been here since my preteen years. When Michael asked me out, it was like a parade. Everyone acted like it was a Cinderella story and I won a lottery or something. I have a friend who I have been texting today, and she is letting me know how dumb I've been. I never told her of our issues, and is about ready to commit crimes. LOL. I think I lost myself for a bit, but I wanted to leave the church low key for a while because of my treatment, so that helps a bit. Update 2. It has been a hot minute. I forgot about my posts until I was watching a YouTube video on Reddit stories, and the story reminded me that I never did update. I found a church in my city a bit more laid back, like we can go to the pub after and have a laid back laugh. I did like it and made amazing friends I am still in touch with, but the going to church idea came from my therapist, and it was to see if I do identify with the church or the ideals of it, and I don't. So now I am back to being the heathen I am. LOL. My ex quickly moved on and he had a new GF within a month of us breaking us. Bless that woman, I thought, because isn't she in for a ride? Oddly enough, she reached out to me on my Facebook and I was curious and opened it. She started with who she is, how long she and ex have been dating, and how long they knew each other. Childhood friends, so basically forever. She then said that she feels convicted by the Holy Ghost to seek a resolution between me and ex, and she is worried I may be his true wife. And if I cannot forgive, then I am proving I am not, and to let her know, as she cannot marry him until I make this clear. I shit you not. Seeing the screenshots, the chat with my new church buddies, my friends sent vomiting emojis, and that this is a cult and not a faith. I concluded they were right and replied with, yeah, marry him if that's what you want. And nothing more. I am getting messages from members of the church, but I don't much care. I've loved my life since leaving. I didn't know life could be so enjoyed really, and it makes me wonder how much damage the church had on me, but for now, just for fun, I am going to an appointment with a friend of a friend's apprentice on tarot readings. LOL. No, that's true. I was asked. No offense to anyone who believes in it, it's just not normally my thing, so I'm curious and interested. Maybe it will be good. I will know. Am I the asshole for flipping out on my fiancé for canceling all the vegan food options from our wedding menu behind my back? My fiancé, 31 male, and I, 25 female, are getting married soon. There wasn't much that disagreed on during the wedding planning except for food. Me and my family are vegans, and there are so many reasons why we chose this lifestyle, and one of them being that we have a history of health issues. My fiancé and his family are the complete opposite. They're hardcore meat eaters, which is fine by me obviously. However, when deciding on the wedding food menu, I wanted to add 5 vegan options. My fiancé and his mom objected, saying it was a waste of money over food that isn't real food. They also argued that this would be offensive for their guests and suggested my vegan options just be the good old salads and appetizers. His mom wanted cupcakes, lol. I said no because for one, it's me and my family who's paying. And two, I want to make my guests feel welcome and not be treated as second-class citizens by being served salad. My fiancé made a face and said, "Isn't that what vegans eat?" I refused to argue about it and said it was final. The other day, I found out that he had cancelled all the vegan options and took them off the menu completely and behind my back. I was seething. I called him at work, but he kept hanging up on me. I went straight to his workplace and confronted him there and just flipped out on him. He was stunned to see me. He at first said it was his mom's idea, then told me to go home because I was making a scene at the office. The fight continued at home and he defended himself by saying that I sort of made him resort to doing this after I kept brushing off his thoughts and input and refusing to accommodate his family. But there were plenty of meat options. Why can't I get 5 vegan options when I'm paying for it? He yelled that it was his wedding too, not my family's. My family said it was fine and they'll figure it out and told me to let it go, but I refused. AITA for putting my foot down on this. Verdict, not the asshole update, 1. So his mom messaged me earlier to try to get me to listen to what she had to say after I kept ignoring her phone calls. She spent long walls of text just to address what I did at her son's workplace, calling it all kinds of stuff from immature to unhinged. She then went on to explain how she's noticed that me and my family kept acting dismissive of her son's input and contributions to the wedding. She said that she noticed my behavior towards him and her entire family and wanted to speak up earlier but didn't and tried to keep the peace. She then went on to address the food menu issue and denied her involvement in the cancellation of the vegan option, but that didn't mean she doesn't support her son's decision. Moreover, she thought it was so irresponsible of him to make that move because of my continual refusal to see how this stuff is a waste of money. She also pointed out how I kept saying I paid for it, and said that technically this isn't just my money, it's mine and his because we're getting married. She suggested I wake up and get rid of my money, I paid for it, mentality. She finally mentioned how bad this whole situation is making me look and said that she and her son had already offered a number of compromises that I chose to brush off and decided to make it my weird hill to die on. She said that not only her son is upset but she and the family are as well after hearing about it, and suggested I just agree on their compromise and be done with it. This pissed me off beyond belief. I responded by letting her know that I'm still standing my ground on this even if I'll have to call the whole wedding off because of it, because honestly, this is just ridiculous. It is. My mom and dad, they don't even know what to say anymore. Apparently, my fiancé saw my response to her, he's with her, and is now trying to call me, but right now I'm waiting on him to get home and see if he's still insisting on the stance he took. I'll update if there's anything worth adding after we talk. Relevant comments. Comment 1, NTA, are you sure you want to marry this man and his family? They have no respect at all for you and yours. OP, frankly, I have no idea why his mom feels so strongly about getting involved. I only included in wedding planning only because I respect her, but I guess it's like they say, give an inch, and they'll take a mile. Comment 2, info, how many options are there in total? So like 5 non-vegan and 5 vegan, meaning 10 options for meals. Is this a buffet or restaurant reception? Or is this a multi-course menu and so there is essentially one vegan meal with 5 courses? NTA, because he did this behind your back without talking to you. But I'm wondering why he cares what other people eat. Also, he's the AH for claiming he doesn't know what vegans eat. You're vegan. He knows you eat more than salad. OP, aside from the vegan we have 6 options with meat. His mom picked 1. I'm paying for the whole thing. Comment 3, if you marry him, this is the rest of your life. He'll do whatever his mom says when it comes to your kids and managing your life. Update 2, so the talk didn't go well. I waited for him to come home so we could have a final conversation about it, but he still insisted on his stance. For more details, his family are a bit on the heavy side. Nothing wrong with that, they're perfectly within their right to decide how to live, but they get easily offended at the mention of the words weight and food. I tried so hard to focus on the issue at hand, but I noticed there was a pattern of this behavior. He said it wasn't true. and that this was just an attempt for me to throw past conflicts at him in order to win the current one. He claimed he tried to reason with me about why and how his guests might see those vegan options as offensive, also said that his family loved food and consider it a big deal, and how he didn't want his family to feel like there's certain options that they couldn't touch, and feel that there's difference in how I treat them versus how I treat my family. He then went on to explain how it's just an event and how my family should just accept what's on the menu, and if they felt inconvenienced, so what? It's just a one-time thing, they're not gonna die if they had salad and appetizers. What he said wasn't a good enough reason for me cause his folks are gonna think and say what they want, but at the end of the day it's my wedding. And to be honest, realizing that my partner himself thinks it's okay to steamroll my opinions and decisions simply because he's prioritizing others and their opinions over me was really upsetting and not something that could be looked past. Normally, I'm a person of rational discussions and compromises. I'm all about compromises. I'd compromised on much bigger matters than just food, but like people said ... it quote s not about the food anymore. If it ever was. Like, he'd literally lose nothing if he let me have what I wanted, but apparently, he was willing to lose it all over this, which is fine by me. I gave him back the ring and called everything off. I just couldn't envision myself living like this any longer, having to walk on eggshells for his family and letting him basically override my opinions and have the final say no matter what. Marriage is about compromise, and here he has nothing to lose yet chose to do this to me and my family. Mind you, this is my first serious relationship and I didn't know what to expect, but it's safe to say that he and his mom and family did make it feel like I was taking crazy pills on many occasions, so that's that. Last thing he said was that I chose my family over him and ended everything for the sake of keeping him happy. Decision has been made and it's done. Just wanted to give an update to those who wanted it. Thank you so much for your endless stream of advice and support. Relevant comments. Comment 1, good for you. Marriage is about compromise, and it doesn't sound like your ex is interested in compromising, or even letting you have a say in things. That isn't a partnership. OP. Thank you. And you're right. Honestly. I felt kind of hesitant about posting an update. In fact, I was hesitant about posting my situation as a whole. Normally I'm not the time to share my private business online, but I was desperate. Like I said, there were times where his family made me feel like I was taking crazy pills. Honestly, and I'm gonna say this anyway, I hate them. They always made me feel like an outsider and a stranger. Never really warmed up to me and instead pretended to like me, but it was obvious they resented me. They claim that I'm a covert fat phobic, but in reality, I got mocked, along with my family, for being underweight due to health issues I'd mentioned before. Don't even get me started on future Mill, though I feel as though I gotta let it all out and vent. Comment 2, you go girl. Dude 100% laid out a roadmap where only his opinion matters and yours is irrelevant. This probably wasn't the first time, but it for sure would not be the last. OP. Exactly. Like I said, I'd noticed a pattern of this behavior but kept rationalizing it, which was a huge mistake on my part. It's been utter torture trying to please him and his family. I'm an emotional mess right now, but there's this little voice of reassurance telling me I've gone through the worst and survived it. I'm so thankful this happened. It helped me see things clearer.